source or another side. I think most people agree with that, unfortunately. And I think having a whole a whole bunch of controversy dumped on us by a small article from a very small newspaper, increasing the amount of divisiveness in people in our own community, was a poor action. Um, I think that the information that was dumped out on us was partly true, but unfortunately only partially true. And so when it's only partially true, there's some a lot of misconceptions and maybe even some manipulation of information that could be had. And unfortunately, the board, the administration, the board members, etc., nobody was really allowed to defend ourselves or to provide any further information because of the limitations we have from legal and personal and medical information that we were not allowed to talk about. And it was unfortunate that even after seeing all the consternation that was caused by this article, no one from CBT, no one from the Mountain Mail, no one that had any skin in the game from the other side could. Uh, Nobody came forward and said, "Hey, listen, it is a controversial subject. You all don't have all the information. Let's just let this play out." There was no defense of the board, and frankly, there was a lot of blaming of Dr. Blackburn and of the administration also, which had nothing to do with the vote. But anyway, I just wanted to uh, open the door on that. That people actually said that this board was evil for making the decision that we made, and I am grateful that we live in a country that people can be so myopic that they can actually believe that these actions are evil, and they could completely forget about Yemen, Nazi Germany, the Congo, any other place in this world, and actually we qualify as evil on social media. So anyway, I'm unhappy that there was exactly zero support, at least that I know of, from teachers or the CBT or
board member comment recount to give context. And I'm going to use Mr. Rapanui here to help us learn context. One of the big things that this board did do is change graduation requirements, mostly to focus on the other half to 2/3 of the students who don't go on to traditional college degrees, certificates, or certifications. But we did add a course called Senior Seminar for the class of 2026. In that senior seminar, we expect them to be able to have delicate, dangerous conversations with their peers who disagree with them. I assert that we as adults in our community and in our school district need to model those dangerous, delicate conversations. How can we do better as a community? And I'm talking the greater school district, parents, teachers, union leadership, administrators, etc. I assert that you can have those delicate conversations and model what we expect from our students by gaining context. How do you gain context? First is always important to define. So let's define long-term leave. It's between a week and a year. You do not get paid. You do not receive fringe benefits. That means you do not receive health care. You can leave for any reason, but there's also a specific cutout for if you're going to leave to get an advanced degree. In the last 10 years, everyone who's been granted it, not one person has returned. Importantly, and if you remember my discussion from last month, Policy Book G holds negotiated policy. This is a negotiated policy, so it takes time to change. Finally, what's important for context is this is a benefit only for our certified teachers. If you are a dishwasher, an occupational therapist, a speech pathologist, somebody who's keeping the HVAC going in all of these old buildings all winter long, you are not eligible for that benefit. It is only for teachers. So I hope by defining that, our social media keyboard warriors have more context. Second, I want to give a history. It won't be as detailed as last month's history lesson on Policy Book G, but in late 2022, we as a board knew we had some gaps and risks in our policy. They either contradicted each other, they left us insanely legally vulnerable, or they were completely inequitable. So we asked our attorney, Melissa, who's right here, to look over them. One of the two major brush fires was the long-term leave policy. This needs to be repealed because you are leaving your district so vulnerable to a discrimination lawsuit that the district may not be able to even exist after some big, massive lawsuit. That's January 23. April of 2023, two of our wonderful former teachers asked for long-term leave. We as a board had a very difficult discussion. Several people that are here today were in that discussion or observed that discussion. And we made a very difficult vote. The logic was if we're going to repeal it and replace it with something to entice those teachers back after they did leave, that we should vote no consistently to decrease the legal liability that this district has. Those were hard votes. Those are our friends, our colleagues, our neighbors, the teachers of our children, and we took those. So fast forward to August, this fall of 23. We started working on our policy books. We did A, B, C, and D, right? CBT moved their negotiating timeline up, so we skipped E and F and we went straight to G. Listen to last month's lecture about what that's about. So we come in to February of 2024. Anyone who's paying attention knew exactly what that vote was going to be. A reminder of what Jen Shookman said, it has nothing to do with an individual. It has everything to do with the responsibility that these lay people who volunteer their time to protect this school district from a massive discrimination lawsuit. Everyone, the teacher, union leadership, CBT, faculty, staff, media all knew if they were paying attention to the meetings that they were at before, what that vote was going to be. It was not personal. We just have a wider aperture and different responsibilities. So that's the history of it. So next, how else can you give context? You can give context by having a counter narrative. So I want to give a counter narrative. I am proud of the fringe benefits that this district gives. Examples of such fringe benefits. You get a 3/4 reduction in the cost of your fee payment at the early childhood center if you have a baby and or toddler and preschool. You get, we pay for your teacher or employee's healthcare insurance. Even if you work half-time for our school district, you get free healthcare for that individual. Not only healthcare, but we really work hard for other good healthcare, the other programs like dental and eyes, for example. I stand by the 25% max that we can represent, that we match with para. And like Jen Shookman said, our benefits impact or are equitable or equal to or better than any of the businesses and other government organizations. We are competitive. But I want to speak out to the support that happens. And I'm looking at principals right here, and I'm looking at administrators right here. They go above and beyond what's required by law, what's in our policy. You don't know about it because it's confidential and it's discreet. I value the support. Even if you're shaking your head, I value the support that these people do that they can't explain what they're doing. So that's presenting a counter narrative to what has been going on in our public discourse. Finally, another way to increase context and model what we expect of our students is to make a recommendation. The best thing I love, well, one of the best things I love about our community is that we are all engaged. We care about our community. We care about our teachers. If the community didn't give a crap about our instructional quality and our humans, we wouldn't have this uproar. So I want to frame that in a positive. It's one of my favorite components about Salida. However, I think that we can do better. How can we do better? Things are rarely black and white. Pick up the phone and call your friend instead of typing vitriol on a social media page, particularly a friend that's on this school board. Think about how you're speaking to your children that are in this school district so your child doesn't confront a school board member's child about their parents' school board vote. Think about that. That's a good way to improve how we have dangerous conversations. If you're on CBT, think about how you communicate about how you feel about your employee when your child is also a student, and then they perhaps post things on social media that don't have enough context. Pick up the phone with somebody you disagree with and say, let's have coffee together. One of the best things that I've ever done in my life is be an election judge, because I get to work for the last 5 years part-time with somebody from across the aisle in a very important fight, in a very important right, and it really gives you context on how to have those delicate conversations. If we expect our students to be mature and appropriate, to gain confidence, to gain context, to find evidence for their position, my recommendation is that we model it for the next 3 semesters before they are required to do so. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, quick comments for me. Shifting gears a little bit. We had a good operational wish list conversation. A couple of things that I wanted to say in there, but I'm happy to say here. I think we all see the connection between athletics and activities and all the things that our kids do outside of the classroom that benefit their work in the classroom, and all the good things that we make them young adults. So as I told David and Aaron, if there's ways that we need to support those programs in addition to the other things that we're doing, I would be in favor of that. Also, we're talking about the community dynamics changing drastically for various reasons. Some of them, and we talked about an English language learner being hired by the district. I do remember many years ago we went and did our CNC tour. That is a big thing of theirs, and helping English language learners get GEDs and things of that nature. I'm not sure if there's any possibilities to work with them, work with our friends in the district up north, because I know they're also having these conversations and challenges of dealing with the influx of different families that are working in our communities but may need a little bit of help there. So just a couple of pieces that I wanted to note of. Hopefully we can find some support, maybe as a county-wide support for that issue that seems to be coming up. That's it. Okay, nobody else has comments, and we'll move on. Written messages to the board. We have two. We have one from the West Falls giving us notification of some of their correspondence with PD, and then Serena Seaberg, hopefully I said that correct, letter regarding the past meeting and some coverage. Public comments, I don't think I saw any. See head shaking, so good there. So moving on, approval of the agenda. Looking for a motion. Any questions? Okay, we'll go.
Dr. Beckman-Pettit, Dr. Hill, Mr. Hobbs, Mrs. Lundberg, Mrs. Pascal, Ms. Shipman, and Mr. Smith.
All right. Okay, moving into reports. No guest reports, campus reports. The detailed HEA report will be presented at the next meeting. I don't know if she provided that in our packet. It seemed to be more detailed. So we'll get that. We'll get that presentation at the next meeting. District reports. David, Will, anything to add or updates?
We're excited. We're almost to spring break. Thank you. We're excited. We're almost to spring break. It's always amazing how fast the year runs, and after spring break, it goes even faster. Start to make sure you're paying attention, board members, to your emails. You'll start to see invites to graduations. You'll meet speakers from kindergarten graduation all the way, sitting on stage with our 12th graders as part of the district. There'll be lots of different things. There'll be CMC graduation events. It's just every building having those things, and you'll see a lot of events. So please work with Kim on that so she can work with principals to make sure we've got it all organized and everything's covered. But May happens in a heartbeat, and May is really, really intense for all families, and definitely you'll feel that as a board member as we get that stuff, because budget season also comes to that. So I appreciate everybody's time earlier. And we'll see how the snowstorm happens. Maybe spring break will happen early. It'll be ironic if that happens. So we'll see how that storm rolls through the state in that piece. Did have a couple things, board members. You asked. We had some public comments last week and week before, time before, about some issues. We'll ask you to look into some people's frustrations or accusations, and also some comments about, or do we have an mass exodus of workforce? Would you mind sharing some of that research?
Right. So after the 27th board meeting, I received a formal request to investigate an allegation of a hostile work environment. I felt it was a complex enough situation to contact our legal counsel to have them investigate it. And so I contacted them and started to move forward with that process and getting them information and video links and that type of information so that they could start that. After all that came back from our attorney that it did not appear that the district was creating a hostile work environment according to policy AC. She also went on to say that she recommended that the district not proceed with the formal investigation under policy AC, and they may want to follow up with the individual who brought the concern, and also use this information as context moving forward on how we can do a better job of things. I can tell you that I spoke with both the person that made the complaint and the person that had the comments, and I had a really positive conversation with both of those people. I think I have a better understanding of what was meant by the comment. It wasn't necessarily a violation of policy AC. It was more of, to Jody's point and to some other points, how do we do a better job with some of the things that we're doing. So I believe that the issue's been addressed, and I'll continue to communicate with both the person that originally asked for the investigation, and I hope to certainly continue with the person that I spoke to and follow up in email and on the phone with those types of things or other types of things in the future. So that was that part. The other thing I've been tasked with was kind of setting up an exit interview process. I pumped the brakes on that a little bit. I do have a draft. I have sent that draft to all the building administrators so that they can take it to their building leadership teams for some feedback. All it is a draft so that we can get a better idea of when people leave, why are they leaving? When people resign, or why? Is it they don't like what's going on? Is it money? Exactly what it is. I can tell you I looked into this year already, and as of the 8th, I put this in your report, but I wanted just to touch base on it as well. There's a handful, I think it's 9, don't quote me on that, I don't have my draft board right in front of me, people that were leaving. 1 is retiring, 2 are pursuing other careers outside of education, 3 are moving out of state, 2 are potentially caring for elderly parents and having to make that decision of, do I continue to work and pay for care, or do I quit work and be the parent of my parent? At least 1 person that I know of already left. I'm going to call it for personal reasons. It could be health reasons. I don't know of anybody yet that has left because they were disgruntled. I can't say everybody that left was 100% happy, but that was just, I think, some important information for that. We also had 2 people leave mid-year, which was one was classified and 1 was certified, which throws everybody in kind of a mess. We had 1 person that happened to this week. 1 principal now is scrambling to figure out how to cover CMAS with small groups and all the groups that are needed for that. And that's no criticism. That's just something that has happened. I also took a minute to look at some of the bigger districts in the state, because right now we have, I think, 4 or 5 openings still to fill. We've filled about 10 already. We've got 2 more people on the hook, so we're ahead of the game there. I looked at District 11, which is Colorado Springs' big district, over 150 teacher postings right now. I looked at Denver Public Schools. They had 350 jobs available. They were not all teacher jobs, so cut that number down. That's still a big number. Jefferson County had over 150 positions open as well. So it's a national problem. It's certainly a challenge for us here for a number of reasons. But I don't think this is unique to us. I even know some smaller districts here in the state. Elizabeth, which is kind of over by Parker, a little bit south and east of Parker, is even coming up with a brand new plan on how to attract and retain people, because their turnover is more than half of their teachers every year, and they're looking at some pretty creative ways of doing much larger steps every other year. So I think there may be some opportunities for us to look at some things to figure out how to fund them. And I look forward to doing that work with hopefully with CBT and people around on how we can better attract and continue to retain the people that we do have. It's a great district. I know we've got a couple of people that have applied and may or may not be hired from Buena Vista, which is a blessing and a curse in itself in this community. But right now, it's where people want to be. So.
Well, you said 4 openings. Is that teacher openings or?
Correct. That's just certified openings. There are some others that are for classified, and will normally have more classified, because a lot of times those are work agreements, and they will open up later in the year. The other interesting thing is a lot of our openings right now have been kind of like a shell game. I think 9 of the positions, this person leaves, so this person takes it, and this person went from this building over here, and that person went here. And at the end of the day, it opens up a couple of positions that maybe weren't originally open, which is good because it gives people a chance to grow professionally, do some different things, try some different things. So that's kind of where we are today, and I'll try to keep you updated as to how that exit survey goes. There are a number of districts that use them, and I think we can come up with something that may not give us every answer to everything that ails society, but it'll certainly give us some feedback to things that are working and things that we may need to address moving forward.
I'll just add to that, we're excited to see the TLCC survey. So for those of you who may have heard that, but that's a statewide survey. It kind of comes through the teacher workforce, and so we should have enough participation in that we can use that data, and the state will share it with us and allow us to. You have to get so many people participate that allows you to disaggregate it and kind of play with it. And I think we were able to hit that. So our association, I know, pushed hard on that. I know our principals did as well. So I'm excited to see that data and see what it says and how does it help us. It's always fun having those data points in March, or what did you call it, Corey? Sorry, Farch. February and March as a hard season in schools. February is just a hard time, and March kind of keeps on coming until we hit spring break. And after spring break, it's just an easier season to, it's daylight savings. We get more light, so it's nice. But we're excited to see that piece. That'll help us. Your turnover rate, it's just hard to know what you put into the kind of the statistic. It's around 6%, and depending, maybe it might be around 10%. So we'll be interested as the year settles out. We look at instructional staff. If I'm in a public meeting, I'll normally say instructional staff versus certified and classified, because I think that communicates to more of a community in that sense. I also wanted Aaron just to update a couple things, and then we had some updates on taxes and our cash loan and a few other things I wanted you to hit on for the public.
Yeah, sure. I know I shared some of this in my board report, but also I think it's important publicly. We are coming through March, so we just got our first big tax payment of the year. So as we've talked about all year, we're transitioning to more locally funded. So our first big payment came in on the 10th. So we're finally getting some of that cash that we've been expecting. I think we're going to be able to pay off the interest-free loan at the end of March, and we shouldn't have to borrow again this year. Regardless, going forward, just so you know, if we do get to a point where we borrow more than we can pay off in March, we still will have to pay it back in March and then borrow again in April. I think it's likely we'll have to do that next year, just based upon how much we don't have an unassigned reserve. But this year we should have it paid off by March, and we shouldn't have to borrow. So really excited about that. We did make some changes to our banking. We met with a couple different people, looked at our banking, and we're staying with the same bank, but we did have some opportunities to gain on interest rates, and we should increase our revenue quite a bit in different areas. So we're excited about that, as well as we're looking at a new credit card solution that helps us partner with another local bank as well. So very excited about that. And then I think the last thing, just as we're making more gains and as we're getting into budget season, super thankful to everybody who was involved with the financial plan. It's allowing me to really dive in and compare ourselves to other districts even more than I was able to in the past, and really use that the budget to look at every other district. And I'm finding some lines that I think we can dig into deeper and make some bigger gains there. So I think we're going to see some gains on expenditures in the budgets, as well as potentially some revenues. So really excited about the next year.
Aaron, would you mind just commenting on the one line item that we've been discovering around just how coding works? It's not a change in money, it's a change in coding on administration.
Yeah, so there's one line in the administration on our uniform budget summary. There's a line under our administration where, as I compared that to other districts, found that it was significantly higher, and so tried to dive into what was causing that. Why were we higher than other districts? And it's twofold. I think there's one area that we can make a little bit of gains on, and we can adjust the budget on our expenditures. The other piece of it is because we have two banks and one bank is used for our activities fund, all of our activities is coded as an expenditure, and it's paid out of that administration line item, which to me is not, no other district that I've looked at is doing it that way. So I have to do some research and figure out how they're coding it, either through expenses, or are they doing it through a transfer or something along those lines. But so that's it's just a change in coding. We won't be changing the expenditures, but it might look different on the budget next year for sure. And that's basically all of our athletics and activities across the board, whether it's drama, music trips, as well as all of our athletics. Those are things that are coded in that way, and I'm trying to adjust and research other districts and see how they're coded. So we should be able to compare that better next year.
Also, just want to comment. I'm excited because we kind of challenged ourselves to do better at getting our contracts out earlier, right? And I think we did better last year, and this year I think we're going to meet our goal of having those contracts out before spring break, which should be the end of the week. I think we're all set. There's some decisions tonight on your action items that inform that, right? If you guys, we have recommended to approve steps and levels and that increase to teachers and all staff. That's tonight. So if you say yes tonight, that gets on the contract. So if you say no, then that'll slow us down as we try to problem solve that. We've also, you'll get the full report, but a recommendation to pick up 100% of the increase to insurance costs at 11%. And if you would say yes to that recommendation, then that would go into that formula, allows us to get those contracts out as well as the longevity list, which is also in your, I believe that's a consent agenda. So if you approve those things, the team should have those out by, we're all set, should have those out by the end of the week for spring break. So people are aware of those things. So I'm pretty proud of the business office and everybody else to keep improving that, because that is getting us at the front of the line in the hiring game in a very competitive work environment. And so I'm very excited to see that piece. I also just want to mention UPK continues to be an interesting storyline to follow. So I think we'll probably have some more updates next month. But just know that we continue to see that revenue to be very irregular, unreliable, unpredictable. And how they are trying to now address the 3-year-old issue has significant impacts on us, which could have significant impacts on how many slots that we can offer our community, which could have significant impacts on childcare, which is one of the major benefits we're able to offer our young families that keep them in the workforce, and those could be the slots that are impacted. And so those are could be that we have to navigate while we're waiting on the state to try and unravel their complications. So I just want to name publicly that I see that as it's kind of storm clouds. They could all dissipate and be no big deal, and the rain never actually hits the ground. But I do want to bring the public awareness to that, because I know that our entire workforce, the Achilles tendon of our local economy, is childcare. So we are the biggest provider of that. So I just want to name that from Teresa and I's perspective. We have concerns. We think we can navigate it all. And it would not be fair to not say that as soon as possible that there are concerns around this piece. So I just want to name those things. Does anyone have any questions or anything you want to make sure that I comment on, or anything from staff that you need updates on for the report?
I think I saw a headline, because I headlined it, not necessarily reread, that FF, and then I couldn't find it again. The FF is out of money potentially already, or something along those lines.
I don't want to go too far into that. This is a national conversation. He's talking about Amendment FF, which was something that was voted in a year and a half ago, that it provides free food for all. We'll normally refer to that program as free food for all now.
Healthy school meals for all.
Healthy school meals for all. Thank you for the correction.
Thank you.
But just a lot of acronyms, so everyone's on the same page. We are participating in that program this year. The recommendation is to participate in that program again next year. Because so many things are in dynamic flux, we don't feel like we can make a strong prediction or recommendation to opt out of that piece. But the problem is it was sold to the public on possibly, I'll be careful with my words, potentially sold to the public on smoke and dreams, and not on hard analysis of revenues. And so now we are having to do hard analysis of revenues, which is the way those things happen. Of course, we've placed it into our Constitution, which is a fascinating part of Colorado politics, which we're not going to get into here. But Will, you want to give the update?
Sure.
Sorry.
So the feds have now stepped in to kind of subsidize we used to just get money from the federal government for free and reduced meals. Prop FF came around, healthy school meals for all. That's now paid for by the state. The feds have changed their rules, so they're going to try to pick up more of the bill. It doesn't change the revenues that we get. We'll get the same amount of money. It'll just come from a different entity. To your question, Joe, our district is it's certainly a challenge to subsidize the food program. Many other districts are having even other problems as far as where do they store all the food? They don't have enough freezer space. They don't have enough oven space to cook the food for the kids. So they're having to expend extra money for equipment and those types of things that weren't in the budget that you're not getting compensated for. And as we did a while back, raise that minimum rate to $20 an hour, other districts around the state are starting to do that too and realize, we don't have enough money to buy the food, make the food, and pay the people with what we're being reimbursed. So a lot of that's still in the legislature. They've got some fixes in mind. I haven't seen anything hardcore yet, but I think when we first started talking about it a year and a half ago, I couldn't figure out how it would get funded. And lo and behold, now somebody else can't figure out how it's going to get funded. It's a great program. Nobody wants it to go away, but we also don't want to go broke doing it.
So Art, that'll be one of the things as we do the operational budget. Of course, we're excited to see after spring break, we should see the third quarter of how the state budget is doing, which informs as they build our budget for us, basically, it'll inform us and give us our best predicted numbers. So as we're going through budget season, just keep asking questions. And also legislative season's kicking up. And so there'll be a lot of fast things moving back and forth as we might have to respond to things we need to take public stands on, or one of us needs to get to the Capitol to, take the stand on certain things about how it can help us as a local school district.
So is that something we can opt out of? And if so, how?
Yes, we
and
can.
Can we opt back into it after we opt out?
We do not know if you can jump in and out.
Okay.
Yes, you can jump out. That's where it stood last year. I think there's questions of whether that opportunity is still there, because I think they're trying to still figure out the rules to regulate everything.
So there's a timeline when you have to.
There's timelines and those things. Right now, staff's recommendation is continue on the current thing and do it again next year. And so we can kind of figure out to see if the state and the feds are able to change those reimbursement rates that would make it a sustainable dream, or whether they can't really improve and hit the inflation. Food cost inflation continues to go through the roof. As we're doing our budgets to actuals halfway through the year, we're seeing those things. So yes, should be, maybe. There's some good, strong answers from you. But right now the recommendation is to stay the course for this year. You'll see Andrea is going to have, as our kitchen manager, she's going to be making recommendations for some larger kitchen equipment, redesigns at Longfellow, as they're serving more meals, and we're going to have to try and say, do we wait 12 months to suss out that complicated storyline? To what degree is it just necessary, and to what degree is this program requiring us to spend extra dollars? I think that's where you're going to see locally the hard struggle decision in the next 12 months.
The other thing is with the program, in addition to the food being paid for, it also has some stipulations on local growing and buying local and local meat, local produce, and those types of things, which are super beneficial to the community and to the communities that are buying the produce. But it's a bigger question than just do kids eat for free. And as of now, yes, you can opt out of it. To David's question, I haven't gotten a good answer on can I opt out this year and opt back in next year.
Any follow-ups? Does that work for you?
Yeah, and we're seeing it be a significant hit to their budget. I think it's around $300,000.
It's almost 400,
Almost
closer to 400
so
in terms of subsidy to subsidize that program.
as we're getting in this austere environment of budgeting, it's something I'm looking at certainly as a board member, as a large ticket item, and frankly as a parent who can afford to pay lunch for their kid. I think there's other parents in this district that would $5 a day or whatever lunch is. It's still super cheap, but it's not like buying a sandwich at Sweeties for
And it's high quality. I think I would do want to compliment our kitchens. I know you guys would as well. Just how good the food is and how much raw food they're able to use. So it's not pre-processed. I'm most proud of that.
Just a simple question. Did it cost us money last year to participate in this? Is that what that 320, 370 or whatever that number was? Is that how much more it costs our district to participate in free lunch?
So I can kind of answer that. I mean, the year before that, we still had to subsidize. We've never not had to subsidize the lunch fund out of the general fund. We've been close at times through grants and things like that, but we've always had to subsidize to some extent, as far back as I have information, at least within the past 10 years. This year was the most. We increased it by about 170,000 from the 150 previous year. So yeah, it's a significant chunk. Now there's multiple things at play, though. You can't just say necessarily that that's all FF, because we did increase salaries of all of our staff, which is kind of that's a set cost that we're going to have regardless of the income that we get. So if you just went away from free food for all, for example, then we have to figure out, well, what's the cost that we have to charge per plate in order to have enough people eating lunch that aren't on the free food to still cover the expenditures. So I don't know. It's a tough analysis to figure out. One of the things that I know the staff and talking about is it's also a benefit to a lot of our staff that has children in the district that now does get free lunch for their students as well, for their children. So that was one of the reasons we stuck with it. Also knowing that in order to figure out how much we could actually save if we went off free food, part of that is the increase in staff costing that we've put into place over the past 2 years. So it's multiple. I don't think that we can just say, yes, it's because of free food we're 170,000 more subsidized than we were last year, but I think it's a large chunk of that, if that makes sense.
In addition, we have seen large cost inflation on just food prices, and those haven't settled down yet. So again, staff's like, let's stay the course until some things calm down and we can start to make better predictions. Right now, those inflationary costs have not stabilized. So that's another factor in this multivariate equation people are trying to unravel.
I think one of the most basic social measures of structure in being a parent is being able to feed your child. It's too bad that we need the school to do that. It's an opinion, obviously.
Any other questions on that topic? And obviously send me questions if there's next month you want some real detailed stuff, then we'll make sure we have some real detailed stuff. But a lot of that is in flux, and you'll see some headlines, and we'll be chasing headlines just like you guys, and calling our legislator to see if we can do that stuff. But, the other piece I did mention in the work session, or Aaron did, we are seeing some support around rural funding again this year, which was not predicted. So that'll be something that the legislator over the next 60 days will be chasing, trying to make sure we either get that in our basic PPO general fund, or if they're going to put it in those dollars, then we're going to go try and secure those dollars for our district. So that might be another place where I call on you to say, hey, may want to drive to Denver with me today. And I know one of you guys will jump in the car and help me out.
Okay. Any other questions of David or our administrative team here? Okay. As always, welcome to stay and enjoy the evening with us. But I suspect most of you will be leaving. Have a good night. Huh? Moved.
We're concerned with time, so yeah. You got the presentation, but see it another night.
Thanks all. Okay. Consent agenda items. Looking for a motion to approve consent agenda. Thank you, Jeff. Looking out.
I would like
Discussion next.
you can say it. Go ahead.
It's time for discussion.
Okay, we're there.
Yes.
Okay,
I
good.
have a motion and
I
a
just-
second. Go for it.
In F, approve on first reading policies, I 1 and 4. I just wanted to make a couple of suggestions on verbiage, just so it's not a straight across from what is written, that maybe we could consider next time. I'll maybe make those suggestions and submit it to David and see what you think of those.
Yeah, if you could give me if you can give me your suggestions, however, and give me about 2 weeks to turn around, I'd love to get your suggestions run across legal, particularly on that one, because these are CASB updates, so they're just kind of legal things. So it changes to law. So there's one in AEA policy, and I always on those policies, particularly, I'd like to get some legal review. So give me suggestions. Give me about 2 weeks so they can turn that around for me.
Indeed.
Yeah, we can capture edits through the second and third readings.
Sure.
Anything else? Ready for a vote?
To approve the consent agenda, Dr. Beckman Pettit. Dr. Hill. Mr. Hobbs. Mrs. Lundberg. Mrs. Pascal.
Aye.
Ms. Schiffman. And Mr. Smith.
Okay. Discussion items. Insurance committee presentation. I believe that is Mr. Waddell taking that one over.
It is. Today it is. We have 7 people. It is today. Sorry. We have 7 people on the committee. I invited everybody, and 4 or 5 of them had legit things to do, and that's fine. I did put in your board report kind of our recommendation, and I have my notes here. The committee met with the representative from Willis Tower Watson, which is CEBT, our insurance broker. And initially that 18% was just for health insurance. We had another 5% for dental. But, you know, in being creative, not wanting to put too much on the back of employees, the team kind of said, well, are there some other options? The CEBT folks came back and said PPO 8 is an option. Currently, we offer a 04 plan and a 07 plan. The 08 plan has an 11% increase, is where your insurance committee update that I gave you comes from, and that's that $127,000 on top of what we've done last year and in the past. The committee thought that was a pretty good a way to include things. Aaron talked earlier about getting rid of Aflac out of that. Saves us a little bit of money too. And then how we increase the health reimbursement account so that the out-of-pocket expense for staff is next to nothing. The copays stay the same. The out-of-pocket went up a little bit, but with HRA, that gets covered. If people need or want accident insurance, it will still be offered. There's some other things that I've been doing. I met with a group from the middle school, and there was some elementary people there too last week. Yesterday, I met with all of the transportation people early in the morning. The week after break, we've got a meeting at the elementary school, and if I need to do something with the high school, I will. That just goes over our benefits, what they mean, and where people are not using them to their fullest potential. And whether that's a flex account that people don't know about, or Surgery Plus, or the offer that they have for mental health and counseling, that's all covered under the plans that we have with no out-of-pocket expenses. There's a lot of things that are there that people just, I don't know if they don't know about, they haven't taken the time to learn. It doesn't really matter. I just want to get that message out so that people can be taken care of, because this to me is a huge benefit. I think Mandy or Jen brought it up earlier of, looking at benefits from other districts. This is a big one. There are 7 or 8 additional pieces to our benefit that people don't really even always know about. I mentioned a couple of them. Everything from financial planning to wound care to mental health, weight management, all of those types of things are all included. So the 08 plan is what we want. And a couple of the people that were on 04 have already said they're going to switch. We can offer up to 3 plans, but right now we've got 2. I'd love any questions that you have. We do have the rate increases, and I think Aaron might have something to say that I may have left out.
No, I don't think you left anything out. I think the other piece of this is if you switch to PPO 8, the big difference is the deductible. The max out of pocket is the same on both. And so the deductible goes from $4,000 to $5,000 basically for an individual. The way that we currently manage that, and I think this is important because I think it's known but not totally known, is we our employees have a 4,000 deductible right now. They pay the first 2,000, and then we have an HRA account that then goes in and pays the next 2,000 on top of that. It automatically kicks in. The employee doesn't have to fill out any paperwork. They don't get a check for reimbursement. It just automatically pays that second half of the deductible. So in increasing it to 5,000, the question that the committee had for me was, can we afford to cover that extra $1,000 as well? And I think that we can. I did some research on it. I don't think it would be any extra cost to the district. The HRA is sustaining itself right now in a path that I think we can do that. So I think that's important because it's a benefit that, most of our staff only has basically a $2,000 deductible, which is a really nice solution with the HRA. And then the other piece that I wanted to say is I'm on the committee too. So one of the questions I did ask staff, I think it's important because it was new to me. The insurance committee is not negotiated, whereas some of the other finance is negotiated. But I think that the point of the board is to get staff input. And so I asked them specifically, they brought up the idea of what if we put dental and vision back on the employee as opposed to being on the employer. And I brought up the question, if I say that I think we can afford 127,000, I'm sorry, but we take some of that and put some of that into paychecks and don't pay for dental or vision, is that better for staff members or worse? And unanimously, they all felt like it was best to have that money contributed to their or to their vision and dental plans. So I think that's important just because since it's not negotiated, it's not like we're not getting staff input on that. I felt that was really important for us to hear that.
I think the other thing to know is in that educational piece, David's talked about it a number of times, but Teledoc, it sounds silly, but the more we use that, the lower our insurance renewal rates are when that gets used more, as well as medical blue book. And so we've got a push to get information out to everyone on those. How do you get it on your phone and how do you use it? Medical blue book is pretty neat. You get to compare prices for a procedure. And then when you select I won't call it a discounted physician, but one that gets a green rating versus a red rating, you'll get a kickback. Could be $25, $50, even $150 that they'll send you as a gift card. And it's a great program. A lot of people everybody has used it. Every time I've presented, somebody said, "Oh yeah, I've got it here on my phone. Let me show you how it works." And then that sells it to everybody else. But there's some other things for the PPO4 people and 8 people that we can do that will lessen their out-of-pocket expenses. Flex is another one that's a big one. That's a 125 plan. It's a pre-tax plan that you get to pick how much money goes into that to use for everything from co-pays and medication to orthotics to shampoo at the end of the year and mouthwash. But there's some great opportunities with that, and I feel real good about where we are. For example, a employee who does their whole family on a PPO 8, their rate is going to go up. Their out of pocket's going to go up about $135 a month, but that's pretty good. I mean, compared to a 18% and a 5%. So, and for the employee only, we're proposing the district offer and support would cover them fully.
So just a few things, make sure you heard that. Go ahead, Mandy.
Well, I'm just curious, you said how much it went up, but do you know what the family rate is? Like we pay the $589.80 for the employee, but do you know what they pay for a family?
Yes.
That just got updated today. So yeah, employee, sorry. So that just got updated today. So I didn't know you weren't looking at it. I was looking at Will's computer screen. But
I just wondered why you left those 3 columns.
yeah, they just sent us the email today updating it. So I can send you the updated on that. But the total cost for employee and family with everything is $1,705.80 a month. And then 1705.80, and then we would cover $589.80 out of that.
Out of that. Oh, out of that. So they
So
pay.
that'd be a remainder of approximately
Minus the
Yeah.
$589.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean it's still a high cost.
it's not high compared to self-employment rates.
And that link in that document, if you use it electronically, should link you now to that PPO8 premiums with the updated numbers.
I don't want to say that you give the best, but you give great coverage to your employees. And I want to make sure that some things they mentioned, So Surgery Plus, it's really a big thing. So any of your common procedures, whether that be a knee or a shoulder or something of that nature, and some of the basic things, those are 100% covered. Normally our employees actually can make money off of those pieces. So they can choose to use their own doctor. They may be covered under the deductible, but those are there. That's a big deal. And so a lot of employees have used that, have found success in that. That's one. The mental health coverage, that they get so much free mental health counseling and therapy available to all of our staff for free, I think is very important, including family, right? And your kids, in those sense, they can also access those free sessions with therapy. And so I think that's a really important benefit that we allow our staff. I think the HRA they mentioned, it's really, it's a slick solution we designed, and it is paying off, and it keeps the high deductible plans that all organizations are having to look at not be a high deductible plan. So I think we have a great benefit in that. And I do just want to say, I put it on myself so nobody else has to say it. I think one of the other hard parts we have in our community is healthcare in rural Colorado is extremely expensive. HRRMC is one of the most expensive places you can get care. And I don't want to make any statements other than that, but that makes it very hard to either suggest our employees go to the front range to get their services, which they can actually be paid to do. And their out of pocket is exponentially different, versus also making sure we got local coverage and we have good docs and good people here. And it's the third largest employer. That is a very large struggle for us to know how to shop locally. And also know what that does to our employees relationship, because it is exponentially 4 and 5 times, many times higher than anything else that could get in the front range. And so that becomes a real struggle for us to know how to keep that shopping locally kind of thing that we all believe in, and support all the great medical people we have in our community. So I just want to name that is a struggle also for all of our employers in our county right now. Any questions you guys would like? Again, we recommend that you do this. This would be 19.5%, almost 20%, you picking up the bill for your employees, so that again, 100% of their benefits are paid for. And in this day and age, that's amazing. And I'm proud of you guys, and we recommend it. We think we can afford it to do that. I don't know if we can afford it next year if we have another hard usage year, but I'm thankful for what you've done in the past, and I hope that you can approve that tonight. I think our budget can handle that, and I think our employees would appreciate that. And I think that it would be great for retaining employees in a very competitive working environment. Will or Aaron, anything else you want to add?
Unless there's any questions, no, and if you think of some, please send them.
I have questions, if I can remember them. So if HRA was depleted, not funded again by the district, gone, does the employee deductibles remain at that $2,000, or do they have to pay it, or does the district cover that other half? Or would that be a conversation for the future?
That'd be a conversation for the future. If it went to zero and we couldn't cover that, then yeah, the employee would have to pay their full deductible. Right now, it's self-sustaining. We're getting as much money in. We fund it a couple different ways. We fund it from dividends from our work comp insurance, as well as through CBT. Occasionally, we get dividends that allow us to fund that as well. Excuse me. So it's self-sustaining at the moment, and I think we can pick up this extra 1,000. It sounds like be between 15 and 20 people on average that use their full deductible. I think we can manage that. We're growing at that rate in our HRA that we're okay. But if that were to go up and suddenly we have 50 people a year that are taking advantage of that extra 1,000, then we'd start to see the HRA decrease, and then I'd have to come to you and come with some solutions.
A few years ago with a chunk of money to get it going.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. And then, to David's point, do you see when this is not sustainable to continue to pick up full payment?
Yeah.
I know that's a difficult
You
question
mean
to answer.
the cost of insurance or the cost of the HRA?
The cost of insurance for employees.
Last year as a committee, we had that conversation. And a couple people on the committee said, we can't ask the board to do this. At what point do we look at a different plan? Do we look at a different company? Normally what happens with that is we've been courted by a couple of other companies, and they'll give you a sweetheart deal the first year to get you in. and then jam you up. I am going to look at some other options just to be, to do our homework. Um, I think it's a healthy conversation though, of where do you put your resources? Is it in salary or is it in benefits? Right now, we're trying to kind of do a little bit of both. Could you do more in one and less in the other? I mean, that to me is what it comes down to. And it also for many employees, depending on your point in your career and where you are, depends on how valuable those benefits are. And that's not to say that for some people they don't have value, but they're only really valuable if you really use them. So there may be some other options in the future for people that don't want. Maybe it's even a higher deductible and an HSA type of a thing. But there's some other options out there.
Yeah, I think, Joe, to your question, I don't know that I have a hard number where it's like this isn't sustainable. I think it will largely depend on how our revenues change every year. I think seeing the governor's budget, seeing that we got more money from our at-risk funding this year and per pupil funding on our second run than we did in the original one, and then knowing that he's expecting the budget to go up again, I feel confident we can cover it. Now, let's say we had a year where they don't give us that, I would be coming back and saying I don't think this is an option. So it's less about a number to me and more about our growth in terms of students and our growth in terms of revenue, and those two are tied together, as you know.
And I would assume, and I think I know this answer, we don't have a ton of people taking family coverage because of the cost.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, we have quite a few people that take advantage of some, whether it's family or employee and spouse or employee and one child. But overall, almost everybody, I shouldn't say almost everybody, the vast majority of people take their coverage, and then lots of people choose to not elect their family coverage. I don't have the exact number for you, but it's not something that if you're asking the question, if we paid for family, would that be something that would bring more people in? I don't think it's something that is that well used, if that makes sense.
I wouldn't necessarily say pay for family, but
Yeah,
you could hear me probably back 7 years ago saying paying 100% of individuals and X percent of families is a little bit, dollars and percentages don't mix, so it just gets a little bit weird. So
gotcha.
Can I say one other thing if we're ready
Yeah.
to close? I just want to make sure I call out a thanks to Amy Moore. Amy Moore is retiring and moving to a different career. She's a high school teacher. She's chaired that committee for all that staff input. It's not one of those you can jump on as a committee. It's our day job, so you work all the acronyms and you learn the language. But if that's not your day job, it takes years to kind of learn how to sit on that. She has chaired that committee for years and done a fabulous job of just helping all of us put our thoughts together in a great way. So lots of people serve on that committee, teachers and staff. They've all done a great job. But I think Amy, really, I just want to call her out as she's stepping away, because it's a gap to try and find somebody else who has her skills and also her willingness to serve for years to be able to learn and navigate that world, to listen to insurance renewal costs and be able to make sense of it. It's not in English whatsoever. So I do just want to compliment her as she's stepping away.
And we will look to, I talked to Amy last week. We will be sending out an email to the entire staff as per kind of policy and how it's written. It's a voluntary deal, and we'll get a list of people. I'm sure hundreds of people will want to be on this, and we'll see how we can get her replaced. I like doing it, but I think it's important that someone else chairs it because it gives it a little different flavor, and I can certainly help them for a period of time. But there's some good people on it, staff and teachers and classified people as well. So.
any other questions? Okay. We're a little over an hour in. We good? We want a quick break before we jump into CBT update? 5-minute break. 5-minute break. Here we go.
Please turn your mics off. Josh, you want to pause YouTube?
Maybe.
If you mind, I'm just going to start just so people are aware. I guess YouTube's having some audio issues, so is the audio all fixed? Okay, I just want to apologize if anybody's listening online and audio isn't working. I think we've got it fixed, so thank you, Josh.
Okay, update on CBT. I believe we all have a handout from David, not the green one, the other one. Looks very similar to how we talked about scope of work in that format. David, take it away.
Sure. Two things. One, remember you've seen this before. We're just my note catcher, right? Where I'll talk about pink policies because I grouped them together because they talk to one another. Purple policies. That language is kind of stuck. So this worked well with us in the fall for the CBT and the board trying to come back and forth and as we try and find consensus and collaborate. So I created the same kind of a worksheet. This isn't policy. It's just a worksheet of how these might go. And so you should have the pink, green, and mine doesn't have the other two. But key one you have here stapled to this are policies I think address all of those pink ones. These are really important. I'm not asking for anybody to make a vote on this or any action, but I'm giving this to you now so you can take it home, look at it. I have sent these policies off to legal for kind of a final review in that sense. I've also given downstairs, Aaron and Nancy Jones were kind of tearing into the fine tooth comb language level. And then I've asked Matt and Jody, because they were on that committee, to look at those. So I think from a CBT staff board level, we have what everybody needs in these. So I'm kind of excited. So there's 6 policies that speak to one another. One of the most important things we needed as a district was to repeal GD, BD, because that caused massive confusion in management of who gets what benefits. And the weird part about this, and I want to drag anybody into the weird codings of CASB, but G means personnel. That's the first letter. The second letter is really important. If it is a B, as in boy, that means it's all of our staff. Doesn't regard, it's not important what classification they're in. If it is C, it stands for certified. Think teacher, right? People's licenses. And then if it is a D, as in dog, then that is someone who is an at-will employee, classified, or support staff. You might use any of those terms. The problem we had was we had multiple definitions of how you get benefits here, and we had inequities of how you get benefits. So the teams come together. They've taken a lot of the red line suggestions that we started with and have accepted most of those, including repealing number 6 here, G, D, BD. I know Aaron would say that is his number one ask out of this whole project, is make that go away because it's causing just mayhem on the business office to actually equitably and consistently apply benefits. So everybody's on the page with that. We think we have figured out how to do that. That's one thing I want to call out is now we should have equitable benefits. Why that's important is in our district, what we're recommending is on benefits. So like health insurance, it is not a relevance of whether you're licensed or not. So everyone would get the same benefits, right? Regardless of whether you have a license or whether you are an at-will employee. I think that is a good intention. It's not required that we do it that way. I think it is better within the greater laws, federal and state, fits within their intent. But I do just want to say I appreciate that that's the direction we moved, is everyone gets the same thing consistently applied. And I think we have found ways to do that. And that helps set us up when we change to a paid time off or PTO policy, which is the next big conversation, right? You needed to kind of deal with this one first and define who gets what benefits to what degree. The other pieces I just want to name in that is when a teacher, well, I'm going to start with a classified person, somebody who's paid hourly and punches the clock. When those individuals do up and over what is expected of them, we give them comp time, overtime, right? We account for every hour that they go up and over. And we are trying to make sure in our district, I need them to work. There's not extra workers, and we're not like overstaffed. So when somebody doesn't come to work because they're sick or they've earned time off, we've compensated them for their extra effort with extra time off. It causes this snowball effect of now the people who are still working are having to work extra, and then they get comp time, and they need everybody like in a kitchen. There's a reason we have 3 people in there. They need 3 people to pull off the ask, and when they're not there, and there's two people there, and maybe they can get a substitute, maybe they can't, it makes a hardship for everyone left behind. That's easier to see there. When we have a certified, licensed um, staff member, they're exempt, but we have a really weird, funky space we live in education, where exempt employees, if you are a lawyer or an engineer, it works a lot better. You don't punch the clock, you get your work done. That space. That's great. We have student supervision though, that has a schedule and an amount of minutes, and our teachers have to be on. There's no like, well, I'll do my work later. No, your work is to supervise students and make them safe. That's your first duty. That creates a weirdness in education where you have to kind of say 7:50 to 4:10 is the work day. And that's more of your hourly employee language, not exempt, but our teachers live in between those two worlds. So what happens if they don't get a 30-minute duty-free lunch because they watch kids for us? Right? We got to have the kids supervised. How do we compensate them? Right now, we compensate them through a choice. We give them $10 an hour, and if it's a lunch period, that'd be $5 an hour. Or they can get a full earn time off. They can earn personal leave. Well, most of them earn personal leave as their choice. That's what I would do. It makes more sense. So if you manage, let's say we're asking teachers to manage a middle school lunch period and supervise students, and they get an hour a day, well, then in 2 weeks, you've earned an extra day off. Okay, that's great. It's motivating. That's what we need. But then it causes a bigger problem. Then I have more people absent because they're taking what they've earned. And so one of the things we're trying to change that's complicated is to say, if you go above and beyond, I want to pay you for going above and beyond and not give you more time off. So compensate in money, not compensate in time off, because we run such a narrow margin of efficiency in running our buildings. We don't have extra human beings to do student supervision, which is our first responsibility. So that's a shift for us. That's a big one. And so you'll see the teams come to working through that. I think we've got a better hourly pay solution that is more attractive. And I think what we're going to be looking to do is to take another year and try and have that option of earn leave or get paid, which would be in GCMD. It's that policy that you'd find that language in, which on your tracker list is number 4. The team said, why don't we do a year of keep the option on there, but a better option, meaning the money's actually attractive, and then run the data and then come back to reassign that. It seemed like a rational way to approach the change, and I think we're getting most of the other clarity and reorganization. So at this time, I think it's ready for final review, and thus I put it to lawyers, business staff, Jody and Matt, to say, I think we could approve this and pass it. I think it's good. So I want to report back on that. The green policies are more of the leave policies. I want to pause on that one because it's the spicy conversation this month. Long-term leaves in there, sabbaticals in there, short-term leave. So I'm just speaking for myself, do not believe that long-term leave, it is possible. We can create that solution. Association members did contribute some red lines. I had to write that better than the last 2 weeks. Appreciated that. I still recommend strongly you repeal that. I don't think that's the best way to handle those scenarios. I think we need to look at how FMLA implements stuff, and I think there's some better solutions. It is an option. It has to be rewritten. It is not a good policy as it is, but I'm still going to be recommending on sabbatical and long-term leave that those two would be repealed, and they're not, whatever reason, however, photocopied that, didn't photocopy this. So I'm going to pause there and see if anybody wants to. You don't have to, of like, hey, Dr. Blackburn, I have a really firm opinion on those two policies being rewritten and made better, or I have a firm opinion on repealing those, or I'm open to the conversation. If I gave you those 3 options, you don't have to say anything, but I am interested just to get a sense for, is there any firm opinions out there so that can informs me of how to bring back a good solution back to you that's within your guys' kind of acceptable solution set.
I would say for me, it's really, I like segmenting it out, and I think there is some validity to it. But somehow, how these all interact makes it difficult to say teaching load is ready and good to go when we don't have some of the other pieces ironed out. So that is part of my struggle because there is a lot of, I know we're trying to get it so they're not as much this way and they're very more direct. I would agree on your repeal of long-term leave and sabbatical leave. I don't know if short-term leave was in that piece too, but I think that there are other ways in how you could have previously presented of how those things could be captured in a different policy in a better way for all staff.
Oh,
I feel strongly that the policy should be repealed, long-term leave. I haven't thought much about sabbatical yet. If there were to be a policy, I personally would support a long-term medical leave policy which follows FMLA guidelines and that I would hope could be implemented at an HR level and not include the board. I don't know if that's a thing, possible, but I don't ever want to be in a situation as a board member making a call for a friend on any kind of leave, especially medical. So that's where I'm at. And then I think the criteria would be what makes sense for the district.
Thank you.
I guess I'm open to the conversation. I'm probably more in the camp that I think it's a benefit to the employees that really costs the district almost nothing. It's very seldom used. And looking at it from sort of a risk reward cost benefit, to me, the benefits that the district gets in sort of employee morale versus our actual cost and hard dollars that go into funding these things is so minimal. I think it clearly needs to be revamped, and I think some guardrails need to be put around it. But we're in a day of age where we were talking about insurance earlier and how much that's going up. We don't talk about that with long-term leave. That's a free benefit. You take leave. I would like to see that it's limited to sort of some criteria, like maybe it's only used for medical or things like that, or maybe you need to have some positive performance evaluations to be able to access it. I think there needs to be some guardrails. I don't think it's appropriate that it be used just as a matter of convenience. If somebody wants to take a family, sabbatical to travel overseas for a year to be a placeholder, they can reapply for their job, and if they're a good employee, I suspect they probably get another job if one opens up. But I do think it's a valuable, at least it's a perceived valuable benefit to staff with almost zero cost to the district. And I've looked at a lot of districts, and a lot of districts I see have sabbatical policies. I'm sure there's plenty that I haven't seen that don't as well.
That's good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I am clear for a repeal. As long as we place the policy that's different than what we have now. Meaning, if I have 15 years of experience and I leave the district for something special, it doesn't matter what it is, when I come back, I do not have to enter at the 7 anymore. I re-enter the district going through the regular hiring process where I was. That's really important. That's really important.
Okay.
I assert, Matt, that it's not a financial cost, but I want to protect or to even give the principals and their hiring teams the full autonomy to put the best person in that classroom that we can find, and that may or may not be somebody who can take on. That's why it's important for me on the other side. It's not a financial thing, it's a philosophical thing. Finally, I think that it should be able to apply to everyone. That if you leave the district, you took a risk on some new profession, it didn't work out, but you return as somebody on the nutrition team, you return at your staff. Thank you.
Thanks.
I think I'm a little more open to the conversation, kind of echoing a lot of what Matt said. I like Jen's idea of putting FMLA guardrails around it, because I do agree with Matt that if you're going to up and travel, then we're not going to hold your place. If you want to come back, you can reapply for your job. So I would feel strongly that if we have a long-term leave policy, it's only a long-term leave medical policy, and any other fun reason to go travel, to go study, that's sort of on your own time, and you come back to the district, like what he said, at your pay scale that you left at, but we're not holding a place for you. But yeah, I mean, I think it's, if we had proper guardrails in place and made it medical and put in all those other stipulations, you will not be paid, you will not receive benefits, you will come back at your pay grade, it's only for medical, then I kind of agree that it's potentially a nice benefit. I mean, it also seems like if it's a medical leave, like looking at our stats, right? Like it's not probably going to be utilized all that often. So I don't see it as putting a huge barrier necessarily to principals having this big pool of people that they're going to have to rehire. Like I'm assuming that we're not going to have large amounts of people out on medical leave because we never have had that before, right?
Mhm.
So I agree with what you're saying. It's nice to have principals have autonomy and not be necessarily like, okay, I have to rehire this person to some position when they come back in a year. But I just don't see that as being like a huge thing to maybe make it worth completely doing away with it altogether. But it would have to be very much only medical for me to be happy with it.
So for Matt and Mandy, I'm listening and I'm opening. But how is that not duplicative from family? FAMLI, the new Colorado program that allows you to leave your job, and we as workers pay a payroll tax for it to pay their salary that they would have had. How is that?
Well, I guess
it
that's
seems
my
it seems like the
question.
second layer, a duplicative layer. Teach me.
Well, I'm not clear on how family works, so I'm open to the conversation. I know FMLA has limits in terms of time.
Time and it's not.
Yeah. So family's still new to me, and I don't know much about it. So.
I would echo kind of a lot of the conversation. I think the policy could go away and it's captured in another policy, like FMLA or something like that, because I think when people have medical leaves, it doesn't mean they need to use a long-term leave. There's other ways that we can support them. So that's why I think it's difficult to say, yes, we can get rid of this as long as it's captured somewhere else, or yeah, this is your need. You can follow these paths. So,
Yeah, I mean, just one thing that was raised with this whole discussion was that if people are not on long-term leave, they don't qualify for family. So is that true?
What was the question?
So one point that was brought up in recent weeks was that if a person is not on long-term leave, then they can't qualify for family. And so is that true, or can they qualify for family if they are not on long-term leave?
My understanding of family, FAMLI, is you have to be employed to access it. Now, I've reached out to a couple of different places through them, and if there's some of these questions that we need resolved or info, Matt, I can certainly get you that too. It's a pay-to-play program. The employee pays into it, and you have to pay into it for 3 years. And then if you use it, that's great. If you don't, the minimum is a 3-year commitment, and it pays you a percentage of your salary based on where your salary is. But the question is, if you're not employed, can you apply for it? I don't think so, but I'm not the expert, but I can find out.
I mean, I think that's actually a huge piece.
That's the crossroad.
Because in my opinion, if we could grant someone a long-term medical leave so that they could qualify for family, that would be the right thing to do.
We can also, so you have that option, and then you can also enter into an agreement, resignation, severance, some sort of agreement, and set up those aspects so that you can also access some of those things.
Yeah.
And that's also, then you get into land of Cobra. So maybe what I'll be able to do then, I think would be helpful, if I ask legal counsel to maybe put a memo together for our next board meeting in a month that says, here's how these things interact, because I think also we'll be able to come back with, here's how our policies could interact with these. We brought in FMLA to our review to say, how does that speak to all these different leave policies as well? But I think what you've offered me is some insights that kind of empower me to go out and talk to CBT and others and get some better information. So I appreciate, I don't want anybody to make any commitments, or I'm not asking that. I just wanted to hear some initial thoughts of where people are at. It sounds like we've got a variety of opinions and everyone willing to learn some more. And we've got to do some learning about how do, I'll say, legal leads or legislative leads impact and inform how we can make a good solution locally. It goes beyond those things.
Well, and then I guess like sabbatical, I would probably be more in favor of repealing sabbatical.
Okay.
And revamping long-term leave. Because I feel like sabbatical has a financial cost to us. That one was also a concern because it said we could have 3 employees at a time on sabbatical. And then I feel like that also is a legal nightmare of approving one person's request over not approving another's. And I do feel like with CMC and different options, our teachers are getting opportunities to get funding for master's degrees. And I guess I feel like in most professions, if you want to get a master's degree, you continue working in your current job while you go to school. And I know it's not great because I did it with a newborn baby. But so I guess I would say I don't necessarily think that paid sabbatical is something that we should offer.
Just one thing too,
Please.
so I've been able to sit in all the CBT meetings, and I think one of the things that I'm hearing a lot that I don't know has been captured in the conversation from staff is that one of their interests is definitely being able to come back on a non-probationary status if they currently have a non-probationary status. And I think there's other solutions for that too, but I think from what I'm hearing from the district perspective is that's fine, but if I have somebody telling me that they can't do their job or that they don't want to do their job, do I really want to then be beholden to them for a year to where they come back and then I am stuck in a contract potentially for X amount of years beyond that? That's a tough thing to ask of the district. I think that's a fair, reasonable interest that the district has, but I also think it's a reasonable interest that the staff has to say, I've earned this non-probationary status, I'd like to come back in that. So I think that's another piece from when I've sat in CBT that I think isn't being captured as much, that I think is an interest on both sides that I think is worth naming, because I think the community would say, oh yeah, the district, that's a rational thought, to not feel like you're stuck in a long-term situation with somebody who's telling you they don't want to do their job or can't do their job. But also it's very rational for a staff member to say they're interested in that piece of their contract. So I don't know how that plays into it, but I know that's a sticking point as well to the conversation. So.
Hey, how would it work? Would it be a new policy that says staff who leaves for any reason not on a leave leaves the district and returns 5 years later? Is it a new policy that would need to say they would step back in where they stepped out?
They did.
Create a new
I've
policy?
added that language into one of those green policies, which I believe is GCBA, and the red lines that I've made, that exact suggestion. I think that meets some of the interests that people have in a long-term leave policy. I think Aaron's mentioned another one that's in there. And I think also, is it medical or is it just for any reason that people are interested in that? I think you guys have touched on that and given me some insights. I think I can move forward on some of these things and come back and give you some education. Some of that I need to continue to pursue and have some legal memos to do that stuff. Jody?
I just wanted to ask if Karen or Ben are comfortable commenting. It's really helpful to hear from my peers. You don't have to, but if you want to.
I would be in favor of repealing the sabbatical. I like the parameters that Jen set up using the FMLA as at least a kind of a framework.
Okay.
To use.
Thank you.
Ditto.
All
I'll
right.
say more. The sabbatical, right. I think that one could be repealed. And the other one definitely just needs to have more parameters and more guardrails. And
In compliment. with
yes,
Ben,
but
yeah.
I think there should be a leave policy.
Okay.
I think it's important.
However, I don't think the somebody leaving and coming back at their same steps and levels should be granted. I think that should be a tool to dicker with.
Okay.
You mean a bigger?
Dicker would
Negotiate.
negotiate.
Okay, helpful. That's
It's an old
helpful.
term for me.
Oh, I know what it means.
All right.
So these will be back at the next March meeting.
Yeah,
Hopefully,
March meeting, and then I'll be looking for you guys to kind of fill in what would be the next column, the Board of Education March, right? So I want to give you enough of an insight. I think we're close on what I'm calling those purple policies that really define the GCE, GDEs. I think we found success there, but I think we've got a little more work to do. So those are some updates, and then I am getting some legal background on some of the ones that I've labeled as blue, which are reduction in force, and just making sure I get a legal check on those because we have a lot of localized stuff. It didn't come copied for some reason, so I'll re-give you the backside of that.
Okay, so just to clarify, we have all of these,
I
so
think
we
Pink-
should read those and give input.
Mhm.
But CBT thinks that they're ready to go.
I think so.
And then these, we are gonna have red lines by
I think
the
so.
next March meeting.
Yep. The CBT is everyone seems to be on the same opinion that the next best way to go is through a PTO solution, which would then let sick and personal go. You don't have to separate those out and manage them differently.
And the
So
sick
everyone
leave
is-
bank is in that too. right?
Yeah. And so then that becomes a PTO bank, which also informs your long-term leave because that informs what happens when someone has, like, for instance, a medical catastrophe, right? That speaks to that support as well. So that's what I'm expecting to have back by your April board meeting is those. So,
Oh, these are 8.
yep, I think you'll have some of those in April.
April.
Um,
What
and
about
so
in blue?
the blue, I think I'm expecting by probably the end of next week to have legal review. Our hope is that we don't need to make any changes to those, but they are very local interpretations of a very regulated set of
Ideas.
pieces. So I'm not going to be surprised if our lawyers say, "I'm sorry, you're going to have to dig in and make some changes here." But I'm going to
That's
stay
good.
hopeful that we don't have to pick that piece up as well.
and then ultimately, Aaron, I assume you're in the meetings sitting there saying, we want this to be much more manageable and clean and easy for your office to manage.
Yeah, I mean, that's my number one. Everything I've shared with the entire CBT team, which I think, again, CBT includes Will and David. They are part of that team. Has been, we have to fix some of this stuff. And the GDB, like, if that's the only thing that we accomplish this whole year is getting rid of that policy, that would be a huge celebration to me because it makes my life impossible in our office right now. So,
The whole team.
yeah, I mean, that policy alone cripples 90% of our policies because they all reference it. So
Okay,
it makes it almost impossible.
but we won't.
Yes.
Not just.
Yeah, no, but I mean
GDB.
that is a massive in terms of like just the organization and especially with potentially not potentially but with a new person coming into the office as well over the next 6 months, it's going to be huge for us to have some ability to do this.
Joe, the only other thing I have is just logistics about with the pink group, because we happen to all be in the same room. So first go to legal.
Yep.
Right, and then second would be business office. Controlling, and then we see probably all of them at the same time.
I've given it all to Matt
Yeah, and me.
and you. I've given it to everybody because I would like to be able in the next 2 to 3 weeks give it back to CBT and say, here's some more cleaning, some shalls that went to Mays, and some periods, and making sure there's no little minutia that we may have missed in the first redesign. Now we're down to that small. So I'd say all at the same time, and then I've got to come back and synthesize that so people can work with it.
When's the next CBT meeting?
It is April 5th, I believe, is the next one. But we have spring break in there, so things will happen fast on that piece. That's also, next time we meet with CBT, we'll be going over the budget build and whatever interest they have in that piece that might be beyond steps and levels or the 11%. And of course, we're waiting to hear what the budget from the legislators is starting to shape up with. And so we think that'll be the right week to be able to have a conversation that informs your April board meeting, but is informed by better data from the state legislature. We're hoping we hit that sweet spot with that. Anything else? CBT, you guys would like updates? We did budget for 4 meetings. I will say that we're being a little more efficient this year, this cycle. And so I think the team's done better on that piece and just doing some work sessions, trying to dig through this versus the big formal with facilitating everything else. I'm hopeful to keeping that 4 meetings. And I know you guys have a firm expectation. And I know I just want to confirm, so I said out loud in public record, or whatever you want to say. My understanding is you guys are expecting by the May board meeting to have everything ratified of what the people expect you to vote on. That would be when it's due. Am I correct in that piece? Yes. Yes.
It would be nice to start the new school year with new policies.
I want to be pushed back. I want a hard line, or is it a soft suggestion by May, or is hard line?
Hard line.
Capital boldface.
I would give you a soft line, but it's going to be done in June if it's not met.
Okay. Anyone else want to comment
This
on that?
fiscal year, preferably
It's not
in
really
May.
board action. It just guides me in how to manage the process. Yep. So I think we're on task. Everyone's going to give their best. So. Okay. Thank you very much for that update. If you guys have something that came up, I wanted to give this to you so that next time I asked you when we meet, you feel comfortable giving your firm opinion. So I can get back to the CBT and keep on working with them.
Okay. Thank you, David. Next discussion item, Melissa Barber from Kaplan Ernst. I think I said that right. Our attorney, for those of you that have not met her in various ways. Thank you for joining us tonight. I know you have a little presentation. Well, it looks like we'll get it on screen. David, is there any introduction to the conversation you'd like to bring?
No, it's just always a privilege. We've gotten a new legal team, so we're getting to know them. And so I think it's important for everyone to get to know face-to-face Melissa, who's our general counsel. Please also know Sam Jones-Roger. She used to work for CASB for years and did most of the legal work there in terms of creating those original policies that most districts works on. She's the one scrubbing our policies right now. She now works for them. And so we're very excited to have her as part of our legal representation. And then you heard last month or last meeting from Kristen Edgar, who does a lot of the contractual work, but Ms. Barber here is our general counsel and has been a great help to me. I've been very happy with the change. I think their team has been super helpful for us to get some better perspectives. And so it's nice to meet. Training here, since she was in town and I had her come for some other stuff, I always think it's helpful to get direct training from your lawyer about how to be a good board. What are some common pitfalls that boards go into? And so this is a general training session. I'm sure she's done it 100 times for boards. And some of this may be review for some of us, but it's good review so we don't make common mistakes that trip up boards. We just don't want to do anything unnecessary.
All right, thank you. So
Melissa, you have to
is that for the
She's got one.
yeah. Everybody has a handout, but okay. Well, thank you for giving me a few minutes tonight. I've been told I have about 20 minutes. So just a little background, I do these presentations for boards, and my longest one is 4 hours, so in an executive session. So 20 minutes, we're gonna really hit the highlights, just the things that I think are really essential for you to be thinking about right now, partly things that are being litigated right now. So we wanna be really on top of some of these issues. So I appreciate being here tonight and being able to meet people in person. I haven't quite met everybody yet, but I've been working with Dr. Blackburn a lot, and it's been really great to get to know your community and the way your school district operates. Our firm represents almost 2/3 of the districts in the state, so we represent the large metro districts, but then tiny districts all over the state. I think one of our districts has 50 kids. So we see a lot of issues, and the things we're talking about tonight are the things we see in all the districts. You might know about a lawyer down south who's been bringing a lot of litigation against districts around open meetings law issues, which have been hitting all districts, all sizes, and in particular the smaller districts who don't want to litigate those kind of issues because they're not insured kind of claims. So this is important stuff, and I'm happy to answer any questions later on. We're not in executive session, we're in a public meeting, so this is more legal information that I'm providing, but I'm happy to answer questions later, in a different kind of setting. So with that, I'm going to get started. And I've been practicing law for 30 years now, and school law, I was in-house with Boulder Valley School District for 13 years. So I've been in a district, going to board meetings 2-3 times a month, helping boards. So now that I'm outside counsel, I don't come to too many board meetings because you guys don't want to pay for a lawyer to be at a meeting all the time. When you're in-house, it's free. But these are, like I said, they're really important issues to be aware of and stay on top of, and we could talk for hours. So what I'm going to hit tonight is just some really basics on board service, but then I want to talk about the open records law, so CORA. Really is important for board members to know. I know you're not answering CORA requests, but you really, I'd like you to have that framework as we go in to talk about the open meetings law. And so that's what we're going to talk about tonight. So just in terms of board service, I know you guys have been on the board for at least since November, if not years before that. So certainly you already are aware of this general concept that as individuals, you don't have authority to speak for the district. But as a board, you do. So again, as you're operating as a board member, your voice is important, but remember that it's the board as a whole that acts for the school district. The other concept that goes along with that is when you're speaking out in public or in a private setting with community members, that you can only speak for yourself as one board member. You can't represent what the board, what their vote is, what your position is as a board, unless you've been given the authority by your fellow board members. So often the board president might be kind of assigned as a spokesperson on a particular topic. Other times the superintendent is kind of designated, here's what you can communicate about our vote. But really you can't, it's important that for transparency's sake that you're not representing what the board is going to do. You might have an opinion, you might express that, you've campaigned on certain issues, and so you're out in public maybe talking about what you're leaning toward, but really you want the vote of the board, the discussion before a vote, to be in a public meeting. And that's the how you honor that role as a board making a decision. And then the actual vote is the board speaking. And that's, the I and the no, it's not the discussion. The discussion is kind of what went into the vote, but that's not what the board is saying. Those are what individual members are saying during a discussion. It's the vote itself that is the board speaking, unless you go that next extra step and say, we'd like, the president to communicate this, maybe submit a letter to the editor under the board president's signature, speaking for the board. But if you as an individual board member write a letter to the editor, then you want to be really careful about saying, I don't speak for the board. I am a member of the board, and this is my opinion. So that's my important thing to think about as you're out in the community. And the other piece of that is that transparency. You really do want the public to know that you're doing your work in public during a public meeting. And that's how you honor that, is keeping those, what the board is doing is, I'm leaning toward this, but we're going to have a discussion, next Tuesday, and I want to hear what everybody else has to say before I decide what my vote's going to be. So again, that honoring that transparency, the process of a public meeting. So in Colorado, public office, which you board members hold, is a public trust, and you are, required by state law to carry out your duties for the benefit of the people of the state. You have fiduciary duties that go along with your role as board members, including the duty of loyalty, the duty of care, the duty of obedience. And the other thing I like to mention is, although as board members, you're generally protected by the Governmental Immunity Act for the actions that you take as board members, there is technically civil liability that can attach in extreme cases, willful and wanton conduct when you're acting as board members, voting and on certain issues. And these are very, very narrow, but it's out there. The other piece is there's potential criminal liability for you as public officials. The laws that applies to for public servants, misuse of official information, official oppression, first degree official misconduct, second degree official misconduct. And the one example I have is state law requires that you maintain the confidentiality of executive sessions. So if you are out there talking about executive sessions with non-board members, that official misconduct? Potentially. We've had a DA look at that in another district. So it's important what you do. And when things get controversial in districts, you start pulling out statutes like this and hear people talk about them. Of course, you have other ethical duties around conflicts of interest. You can't accept gifts of substantial value. If doing so would tend to improperly influence a reasonable person from impartially carrying out duties. You can't perform official acts, which is your voting, in such a way it's going to benefit a substantial financial interest that you have, or it's going to be to the economic detriment of a competing firm or undertaking. So again, a lot of those kind of questions around conflicts are vetted through legal counsel ahead of time. If you are thinking something's coming up for a vote and you might have a conflict, and you should be thinking about that in advance and letting the board president know, and we're kind of working through that. And that really is best practice. And it doesn't come up too often, but occasionally, a classic example is the board is trying to buy some real estate and one of the board members owns it. There's a conflict there. So.
I would assume in those instances, the board member should recuse themselves from all conversations and not just the vote.
Right, and that's an important distinction, is when you have a conflict and you actually can't vote on an issue, you shouldn't be persuading your colleagues to vote a certain way. So you really are stepping back from the issue. Okay, quick Quora overview. Again, this is another topic. I can talk an hour and a half on Quora. We've done presentations lately on this. The more things get a little bit controversial in a community, you start seeing a lot of Quora requests. And so you as board members are not taking Quora requests, you're not responding to Quora requests. Those are funneled through the district office. And occasionally board members receive a Quora request, so you need to know who to send that to. I'm sure Dr. Blackburn will get it to whoever's going to respond to it. But this is they ebb and flow in districts, and typically they are flowing with controversy. People start questioning what is being said kind of behind the scenes. I mean, when we talk about Quora, we're primarily talking about emails. Honestly, that's a lot of what, at least our office, we're getting involved in email traffic and determining what's covered by Quora. So Quora is the Open Records Act. There's a legislative statement about the purpose of Quora, which is the public policy of the state is that public records shall be open for inspection by any person at reasonable times, except as provided by law. So there are two aspects to Quora. One is it a public record? And then secondly, if it's a public record, is there an exception that applies where we don't have to turn it over? So public records, the important thing to think here is it's defined as writings, but writings really includes all paper and, more importantly, digitally stored data. So it includes emails, texts, and voicemail messages. So that's kind of the thing I wanted to highlight for you all, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. So a public record is not information held by a public official in a private capacity. So an example would be if folks are public employees or board members using a Salida account, but they're writing an email to their spouse, hey, pick up some milk on the way home, would you please? That's not public business. So it might be sitting on the district account, but you wouldn't have to produce that as a public record under Quora. So there's that distinction between just acting in your private capacity. The idea is that communications of a public official that are neither used for performance of public functions or involved in receipt of public funds. And then there's certain things that are not public records, such as attorney-client privilege communications. So they just come out of that public record realm. I also put work product, and I underline that, and we could talk a few minutes about that, but I don't think we need to. But there is a misconception I heard over the years that work product equals notes or drafts, and that is not the case. So work product is this very, very specific exception that's defined in statute, and it really is stuff that comes to board members and fits within those parameters. So, so to carry on a little bit with this kind of personal capacity, public capacity. So a public record does not depend on the ownership of the device. So you might have on your personal Gmail account, public records. So that's, I'll say that again. You might have public records sitting on your personal email account. You know, and then what we just talked about is there could be the public account that has personal stuff on it that is not a public record. So this is where, you know, I want board members to know, district employees tend to kind of absorb this over time, but this is important. So if a Quora request comes in, and these are the kind that come in that deal with board members, when you get an issue that's maybe in controversy, is please produce all the board member communications from December 1st to December 30th. And so then the staff is turning to the board members saying, we've got this Quora request, here's what they're asking. We'll search the district account, all your email accounts that are sitting on the district available to IT, but I need to ask you all to send me any other public records that you might have on personal devices or accounts that are responsive to this Quora request. So don't be surprised if you've got some question like that. So again, you've got to be very forward thinking in how you're going to manage your accounts and your work. The other area this comes up a lot is text messaging and then voicemails to some extent. So we've had, and again, the district doesn't have an obligation to hire some company to like scrub your phone. And I mean, we do the honor system, like, hey, we need to pull all public records that, you know, maybe are about this topic or over this time period, you know, and board members have different, I know there are ways you can download things. We end up looking through screenshots of text. So it's important to be thinking about that. How are you going to maintain your text? Where are you going to do your public business? If you want to do it on the district account, that sure makes it easy for everyone to do the searching through IT. Okay, so that's.
I'll just comment. Thank you. You guys do a good job at this time
Yeah.
using your Salida School's email account. I think you guys do a good job.
You don't have an obligation on your personal device to maintain your text messages for an indefinite period of time. There are a lot of district leaders and other board members that delete their text on a regular basis. You know, every week, every 2 weeks, every 30 days, every 60 days. You know, my suggestion is just to kind of think about how you want to manage that and what makes sense. And like I said there, so first you're trying to figure out, is there a public record? And then if it is a public record, are there exceptions? So when our office gets involved in reviewing Quora requests, First, we're doing that analysis, trying to get all the records, and then we figure out, are there any exceptions that apply that allow us to hold something back? Like I said, the attorney-client stuff is not even a public record, but certainly in the school district context, anything to do with, students, their parents are going to be entitled to those records, but you don't have to release student information. You're not going to. And then their personnel files is a whole nother, set of a slide deck on personnel files. There's been a lot of litigation about what technically is a personnel file under CORA. So that's a tricky one. Yeah, there's other privileged information, the superintendent applications and finalists and stuff is also. There is a specific exception that applies to board members. If you have communications from a community member that are like clearly meant to be confidential, we don't have to release those either. Okay, so now we will turn to the open meetings law. So there are really only two kinds of meetings in the statute. They're regular meetings, so those are your, your regular scheduled meetings, and special meetings. So when you say that you have a work session, that's technically a special meeting because there's no such thing in the law as a work session. It's very common practice to use different language around those special meetings. Some where you're taking action and you're calling them a special meeting, but technically work sessions, because they're not one of your regular business meetings, are a special meeting. They all need to be open to the public. Again, you've got this legislative declaration that the formation of public policy is public business and may not be conducted in secret. Again, that should be your framework for how you do business as board members, that you're being transparent, you're doing your work, your discussions in this public open meeting format. So this, if you have 3 or more members together, when public business is discussed or when formal action may be taken, that is a public meeting. So you're usually really careful about having 3 people together in a room because that looks like you're having a public meeting, and it should have been noticed 24 hours in advance.
Melissa, going back for a minute on you. Meetings being open to the public with the new age, and like a few years ago, we were not doing all the YouTube stuff. And it is just, it has to be in this meeting setting. Doesn't need to be on YouTube broadcast. Any of those things are not necessarily applicable, correct?
The live streaming, right. Right. It has to be either audio or video recorded, and that's maintained for 90 days, but it doesn't have to be live streamed. And you have to have that agenda, though, posted where you say in January you're going to post your agendas so people know where to come, when to show up. Mm-hmm. What's that?
Just for that, like, is it just a, the little dictaphone?
Oh, it's all over the board. And I would say since the pandemic, people have moved toward live streaming, certainly.
Okay. Thank you.
And again, that's that kind of value judgment of the board around transparency and engagement with the community. So when you talk about meeting under the open meetings law and getting 3 people together, meeting could be construed with in person, by telephone, electronically, and other means of communication. And we're going to talk more about this. So the open meetings law, technically doesn't apply to any chance meeting or social gathering at which discussion of public business is not the central purpose. Again, this is that transparency and being mindful about when you have 3 or more board members in a room, is it just that you got together, you were all invited to a community event, a fundraiser, and you're there, that nobody's going to question that. But if you've got, I don't know, the boards are all over the place in terms of how they notice when like CASB is a good example. When you have 3 or more board members going to the CASB convention in December, a lot of boards notice that as a public meeting just to make the public aware. We know we're going to have our group of board together. We don't have any specific action items planned, but so there's not this, oh, I saw everybody together. What were they talking about? They were doing public business. So again, that just kind of thinking ahead about transparency. So if there's, something that's maybe school related, certainly policy related, where 3 or more members are going to get together, maybe you want to notice that. So again, it's kind of that thinking about that. What do you want the perception of the public to be? The Colorado Supreme Court, one way to think of this is your public meetings shouldn't be, they're not meant to permit rubber stamping of previously decided issues. So that's what you're trying to avoid is this, oh, we're having all these side conversations offline, email in the hallway, and then we come out into the boardroom, an action item comes up, there's no discussion, and maybe it was like a really big kind of controversial issue, no discussion, and there's a vote. That leads the public to think, well, maybe there was a discussion somewhere else that we're not aware of. So being, thoughtful in how you talk about things at the board table. We've had some litigation coming out of this idea of daisy chain meetings. So this serial, so it used to be that you would think of it as, 2 board members getting together, 2 other board members, or maybe you're kind of talking with people separately was okay because you don't have 3 together. And the courts are starting to say, that serial one-on-one conversation when you're talking about public business and kind of moving decisions forward they're taking a close look at that. So that's a dangerous practice, I would say, and it could be held to be a violation of the open meetings law. The same with the emails. There has been some clarification on what emails are okay. That's we've got a slide on that, but certainly when there are email messages dealing with the topic that the board is getting ready to act on or discuss, whether, and again, it's, the old practice was kind of, send it to everybody and don't reply, but doing this kind of one by one is going to be treated the same way as having kind of this message to all. And this is where you start thinking about Quora. So when you're talking about things that might be coming before the board later as public business, those records are public records and they can be subject to a Quora request. So that's why we talked about Quora. So we have had some legislation about 2 years ago to clarify which emails among board members are not going to be regarded as a meeting under the open meetings law. And those are emails for the purpose of scheduling or availability. Hey, who's available on Monday for a special meeting? Those are fine. Sent for the purpose of forwarding information. So I would do a big asterisk to that one because I've seen that. Oh, I'm just forwarding this report that I got from this outside agency that completely aligns with my point of view to all of you before the meeting. And then somebody else sends, their background information. That is a dangerous practice. And again, if there's a Quora request, it could start looking like you were discussing a public business through email without noticing a public meeting. So again, you've got to be just incredibly careful with email. Responding to an inquiry from an individual who is not a board member, again, so yeah, if a lot of times that will come up with, say, a community member sends a message to all the board members and one board member replies saying, thanks for bringing this to my attention. Please, meet with Dr. Blackburn about that. And you copy all the other board members so everybody's not replying to that person. That's perfectly fine. Posing a question for later discussion. Again, that's another one that on its face, that makes sense. Like, hey, can we put this on the agenda, Mr. President? But again, when you have others chiming in and you can kind of go down a slippery slope with that one. So what's not okay is emails about the merits or substance of any discussion, debate, exchange of ideas relating to public policy, proposals, and matters that you know are going to come before the board. And then my last slide is just the comment about public participation. You have a really extensive policy BEDH. You have the regulation that goes with that. So you have created this limited public forum under First Amendment law. So you've said, public, you can come speak to us. You have 3 minutes to do so. It has to be related to the business of the school district. But just knowing that you have created this limited public forum, so you can't engage in viewpoint discrimination, because you've said you can say what you want to say to us during that 3-minute time. The caveat to that is the board president you've got language in your policy, and it's perfectly fine if somebody's being disruptive, or a lot of districts will read a statement ahead of time when they've got regular public comment that comments need to be appropriate for a K-12 audience, because we have students, listening to our meeting. So people that are using profanity and just, really offensive language, that way the president kind of has the ability to maintain decorum of the meeting. But you can't, like, one example is the policies used to always say, oh, you can't say anything mean or negative about employees during public comment. And that is not okay. And the CASB policy is updated, your policy is updated. But that used to be a longstanding practice. You can't get up here and trash the superintendent. Well, actually you can. And you really don't want to engage in that viewpoint discrimination. And you can, the policy has language like, we encourage you to bring, concerns about employees through the regular channel, but just being mindful that you can't shut people down for what they're saying. That might create a First Amendment issue. That's all I got. Pretty close to 20 minutes.
Not bad. Any questions about all these materials?
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Melissa.
Can I just have one? If we ever do make mistakes, you guys don't very rarely ever get outside of any recommendation she's made. All we really need to do is make sure we include that communication in the minutes somehow. There are ways. It's not like, oh my gosh, what's happened? It's like, oh, okay, well, this happened. We didn't expect it. Let's make sure we make it public, right? And we create a public record of that conversation. So there are ways for us. If in a small town, we run into each other, we have different things, and sometimes it pops up, and it just happens in a small town. So you just need to let Kim or I know, and then we'll just work on making sure that, oh, okay, well, that's a public thing. Let's make that public so that we need to do anything with that. So if you ever run into a situation like, did I accidentally mess something up? I don't want you to be afraid is my key thing, right? In a small town where you're doing your best, you're being a volunteer. Just if you're not sure, just let me know, let Kim know, and we can try and figure out, oh, well, we need to adjust some things or make something known publicly. I just don't want you to be afraid of anything there as you're going through it. You guys do a good job.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah,
See you here again
thank
soon. All right. Action items. Move into the action items. Looks like we do not have any second reading policies. So, looking for a motion to approve the recommendation by the insurance committee to renew with CEBT. Thank you. Any further discussion or questions that you thought of since we had the presentation earlier?
Compliment of Amy Moore. It's a tough job and she does really well, and I'm very happy with this solution.
I appreciate the committee getting together and making it a team effort with lots of voices in the room, and happy to support the measure. So.
Ready? Dr. Breckenridge Pettit. Dr. Hill. Aye. Mr. Hobbs.
Aye.
Mrs. Lumberg.
Aye.
Mrs. Pascal.
Aye.
Ms. Schickman.
Aye.
And Mr. Smith.
Okay, looking for a motion to approve salary schedule steps.
I'll move to approve salary schedule steps.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions? Clarifiers?
Ask David how many of our employees are maxed out on steps and or steps and levels. That's just an important thing for us to know.
They get
And
that
the
information. I
answer
don't know if Aaron, you know about where that's at.
I just said, and the answer is.
I can.
She asked me today, but I didn't get a chance to get to Aaron on that.
Yeah, I can get it relatively quickly. Like I could have it by the end of the meeting, but I can't. I don't have it on me right now. So I
It's
can,
just for our awareness of how many people are not benefiting.
yep, I can. Yep, I'll have it by the end of the meeting. Oh, I'm on it. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
Ready for a
Ready
vote?
for vote?
All right. Dr. Breckenridge Pettit. Aye. Dr. Hill. Mr. Hobbs.
Aye.
Mrs. Lundberg.
Aye.
Mrs. Pascal.
Aye.
Ms. Schickman.
Aye.
And Mr. Smith.
Okay, looking for a motion to approve 24-25 capital projects list as recommended.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions, any clarifiers, reminders that we may need? What is on that capital project list? It was presented to us last week and in the packet.
So
Last
this
month,
is
excuse me.
the 206,000, right? I just pulled it up.
Yes, it is.
So the technology, 3 line items, and then the diesel tank and platform.
Correct.
The diesel tank and platform.
You're also approving that. I mean, the grant is in there for the vestibule on the next item. And then you have a couple of capital renewal items, the Connex solutions, and so the top 3 boxes basically. The maintenance stuff we're still looking at because you'll probably see some updates to the operational budget at some point because some of those numbers are coming in pretty high. The crest doors is an example, so we're just looking into some of those things to see how can we cover that in operational budget or what we need to look at going forward. So.
Key thing, just the public knows, we successfully were able to use our infrastructure for over a decade, technology-wise, but we've run to the end of its life, and so this is the technology backbone, the infrastructure that allows us to take care of whatever we want to do for the next 10 years. So allow us that kind of a robust system that allows us to deal with things like AI and all the new stuff coming online. We'll be set to be able to pursue our programming kind of dreams with this new infrastructure, and getting approved now lets us get all the contracts signed and get the work lined out to make sure it happens in the summer, so it's all operational when everyone comes back to work.
Well, and then additionally, we did have an hour-long work session about this 2 weeks ago,
4 weeks ago, you had
4
that
weeks ago.
one. You had
So
that
I think
hour-long
that's
one.
important to mention too, that it might seem like there's not a lot of discussion right now, but we did have an hour-long discussion.
Hour and a half.
Was it 4 work session? An hour and a half.
Okay, ready for a vote?
All right. Dr. Breckenridge Pettit.
Aye.
Dr. Hill.
Aye.
Mr. Hobbs.
Aye.
Mrs. Lundberg.
Aye.
Mrs. Pascal.
Aye.
Ms. Schickman.
Aye.
And Mr. Smith.
Okay, looking for a motion to approve pre-annexation agreement.
So moved.
Okay.
A second.
Ooh, he wants it. Karen can have it.
Have it. David, I see you're grabbing paperwork, and
Yes.
I know we talked about this a lot, but we had some final things to get through. So
Yeah, and I know the city council also spent some time as well talking to their team, their lawyer, trying to get this done. So I appreciate everyone in the community trying to figure out how to navigate this with 2 elected boards and everybody's needs and a lot of laws and regulations flying back and forth there. So I appreciate that. I think we're pretty happy with this from the architectural standards from our builder, as well as our lawyer believes that we're within a good solution here. So I don't have anything that says this isn't a good product or something. I want to make sure though that as public officials, you're aware of where the key things. We had a very long session. This was 2 weeks ago with our lawyer to review. And I think this falls within what you guys kind of gave us as a directional heading so that we could get to this point. We also didn't want to put something in front of you that we would approve and then the city would be like, well, we don't really approve that. So we believe both teams would approve this, and so we think it's ready for public action. You guys would be the first. We would then send it over to the city as a process. They would take action on it. We would then, this becomes the agreement that allows us to expedite because we've answered most of the questions ahead of time. We would then submit our application packet for annexation in the next stage, but this would inform, guide, and streamline that process. And so that's kind of where our pre-annexation is. It kind of answers the hard questions ahead of time. So there's less confusion and can move forward. Your drawings from your architectural firm are at 100%. They are now in the builder's hands. He is getting those price out, not theoretically, but hard numbers now, because there are hard drawings with all the questions answered. And so we would hope then in that August, I think it's August 10th meeting, I can't remember that, in our next regular board meeting, you should have all of that ready so we can look at hard numbers. So I just want to give the whole process and where this falls within that. I think the key things that you would want to look at then is going to be under number 2, or excuse me, number 1. First off, I'm just going to number 1A. This would be dealt with in the application packet for annexation. The alley behind this building, it's a dirt road. We need to make sure we work with the city to give them right of way for infrastructure, as well as we're right beside the fire station. We want to make sure all our fire trucks can access all that space. And so there's some right of way and some easements, and that just says we're going to work with them. And I have no reason that we wouldn't do that. Then you're looking at 1B, the site improvements. We have agreed upon a fee in lieu solution for this and for each item. It's very important to us to get a hard number, not a theoretical number. And our lawyers work back and forth to get that identified. So Illinois, which is the road over here that is kind of half paved, and then Scott Street, which is the dirt alley behind here. We have agreed to a number that would be to pay for the construction of sidewalks, $26,000, $125,000. That number to our builder feels like we are not paying an exorbitant amount or being overcharged by the city. We would not be building the sidewalks when they get to construction of those streets and streetscapes. We would have put our money in the hopper already, so it would be on them to design and build that. When I say design, though, part of our application process is we do have designs that would show where the sidewalks, curbs would go from an architectural standpoint, which is important because we have to dig retention or detention ponds to deal with the flow of water and runoff. So all that's in our drawings that we will submit, but this number is the agreement upon. But pause there because each of these streetscapes has a different conversation. Would anyone like me to go in deeper about Illinois or Scott Street, about what I've recommended? Go on your mic.
Yes, please.
Jump in.
I just want a little bit more detail. Even though the city was going to improve Illinois, it was on their timeline to approve it,
Yes.
so it was already budgeted. This is duplicative budgeting.
I would think no, because I think this is what is on our property, like sidewalks versus street.
So our responsibility is the sidewalk and they're from. So
Yeah.
they will not be improving anybody else's sidewalk on Illinois Street.
At this time,
Fair statement. Yes.
I mean,
think
I
so.
see your statement and I see the rationale of your statement. What I like about this is it is just the sidewalks. It is not the curb and gutter on those two street designs because they are not ready to do that in the next 12 months in terms of improve that space. And so it is just us agreeing on the sidewalk amount. We do not want to put sidewalks then ourselves and then have them come back and tear them out or not fit the design once they finally get to that aspirational.
And redo.
Yes, and I think they are still trying to lock down exactly when the community can expect Illinois Street from our high school stadium all the way to this building to be 100% designed and built. I think they cannot commit to something at this time.
But
Okay.
yes, if they do curb and gutter and sidewalks from stadium to there, wherever it
Yes,
is,
to Dakota's
This is Scott Street.
game
to Scott
to
Street,
Scott.
others will not be paying for the sidewalk.
That's an important thing that is necessary for our public to know.
So did that make sense to everyone what the critique is?
Nice second question. So we're also doing sidewalks on Scott Street.
We are giving money for when Scott Street is done. Yes.
Same idea, but that one wasn't just planned, that wasn't in the queue, so I'm not so critical of that one. It is for the part of it.
I mean, it's not really worth asking, I guess, but it's a dirt alley that's going to be a right of way. Why are even sidewalks required back there?
Because one day they hope to access the property back there, possibly. Because there is some property back there that may be in long-term plans or could be developed, all the things.
I see the logical part of the question. They would also probably respond to this is what the code is, that if you're developing a piece of land and being annexed, the code says you will add sidewalks on any frontage of your property. So this is a solution. Again, it's difficult because we are exempt from all of those.
All of those.
And they are also exempt from giving us water. So there is a good faith partnership here. I think that this is an acceptable solution to that. Go ahead, Jen.
So to Jody's question, it's more that we are different than everyone else on the street because we are in the middle of a project that will be finished before that would start? I mean, this is just out of curiosity. Or if they were on track to be doing that right now and we're doing one block over and our block, then we wouldn't.
We would have
necessarily-
to by their code because we are the ones entering into and asking for access to their water. So that is the trigger that triggers this conversation.
Then, Mike, I have a question also on 2 Oak Street. Did the city receive a CDOT grant for that 291 Oak Street improvement?
It's great. Okay, if I move on to B, the Oak Street is a different one. They do have grants been awarded. Multiple $1 million grants have been awarded for the Oak Street renovation streetscape. That includes our property. Their position is that their drawings that were approved through CDOT and other places did not include sidewalks on our side. It only included sidewalks on the other side of the street of Oak Street. So therefore, this is new outside of the scope of that Oak Street design. And since it is new, it is a new cost. It is outside their budget. Therefore, it would fall on us to provide sidewalks, gutters, as well as entryways according to the CDOT drawings. They were finally able to provide those to us deep into the process. That allowed us to get those drawings to our builder, who was then able to allow to give a proper bid.
Okay, that really helps.
Okay.
That it's only on the westish side of Oak Street 291 that there will be sidewalks.
Yes, and there'll be a small section. If I'm to understand, they've also added in sidewalks in front of the fire station, our neighbors. So there'll be at least.
And the fire department's paying comparable fees in lieu,
My
or whatever their
understanding
agreement.
My understanding is they found an agreement where there's some sort of that's part of their progress or
costs
that they've included. Is my understanding. Obviously, it's not necessarily my business, so all I can ask is a question.
It's not.
Is there crosswalks going to be included when they do the Oak Street improvements?
Crosswalks have been included. They have moved multiple times. My current understanding is on Illinois Street is where they intend to put the crosswalk. So they had looked at multiple places in front of the fire station and some other designs. And I'd be glad to get you guys those designs if you'd be interested for our next board meeting.
So to be clear, no crosswalk on 291? Or is that what we're
Right
calling it?
across Illinois Street. Like if you're walking from the stadium all the way down here to Scott Street, right there would be the.
Across Oak.
Yep, that's how you cross Oak. 291 is right there in Illinois.
is my understanding of where they've designed that.
Is that one of those lit up crosswalks?
I don't know exactly what the design is. They were very clear that those designs are all in, and our input was not going to influence or change those designs.
And then my third and final question for trees, number 3. We as an organization are exempt from that, but we are being a good partner with another governmental organization for the Eastern trees.
Yes. Fees and lieu for tree has been, just to be transparent, so there's no surprises. We start off, 48 would have been the code, so 30 is less than that. They would also give us a credit for any living tree that we have when we get back to the spring. So we have some nice cottonwoods and some other trees we planted, so that would be credited back to us. The remainder of that, let's just say there was 0, so we'll keep the easy number, 9,000. Just so everyone's aware, that doesn't mean, it means we would submit a $9,000 check. They would not plant any of those trees on our property. Those trees would be, or those dollars would go to support other trees or other projects somewhere else in the city. I just want to make sure that that's transparent.
Can you repeat
I don't-
that? Wait,
I don't know if that's necessarily correct. The way I read this is we give them the money, we go plant the trees, and they give us back the money.
No, if we did plant extra trees, yes, or any trees that we have living, that would be credited to us. But let's say after that credit back and forth, it goes down to $8,000, right? Because we're down to 22 trees. Those, I just want so no one's surprised. We would pay what that credit would be of 8,000. That doesn't mean $8,000 of trees would be planted on our property. It means the city would take the $8,000 and invest it wherever they feel to invest it. If they invest that into trees, then those trees would be planted elsewhere. There is no intent or commitment that even though we are paying the money, that means a tree would then be planted on our property. Or irrigated.
So we're to get water.
Yes.
We have to pay a somewhat seemingly random amount of money for trees or not trees that may or may not be planted, but not here. Or for sure trees will be planted. I'm sorry, this doesn't make sense to me. I'm trying to understand.
I would be
the
lying if I said it made sense to me.
The way I read it is you pay $9,000, and then when we improve the site, for every tree that's planted, we get $300 back. So if we plant 30 trees, we get the $9,000.
So we're kind of giving a holding here. Please
Yeah.
hold this $9,000 as we plant trees
Yeah.
with other funds. Then we get reimbursed in a manner of
Yeah.
speaking for those trees.
Yeah.
Only trees,
Yes, except
not
that
shrubbery.
There's probably code.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
There's probably code of what qualifies as a tree.
there is. And obviously that's not an area of study that I make in my life. And it is this planting season, so this spring, which we have no intent at this time to be planting those trees. So it would just be the trees that are on our property that meet the definition of that, because they would need to have that code, that rule. I just know that would be, that you guys would be interested to know that there's that money, and if we don't get any credit, whatever the remainder is, it doesn't mean that they are committing to plant those trees. That's why I just want to make sure it's clear.
Well, what about the alive, healthy, and adequately irrigated? Because currently we don't have, what are the trees that we have currently being watered?
So I think that that's the key question of when we go ahead and do that. So if I was a board member, I would say, I'm committing to cutting a check for $9,000. If I get any credit out of that, that would be great, but I wouldn't expect it. I would expect to cut a check for $9,000 to cover that fee in lieu of following that code.
So we don't have to plant any trees.
There's no requirement to plant any trees, nor are they committing.
To plant trees, we would submit.
Yes, in this specific time zone,
And
and get $300 per tree that meets the definition back.
Thank
Okay. So again, from our team, we feel like this is a workable solution. In that sense, I would understand that from some people's perspective in the community, it feels like we are taxing unnecessarily, using public funds to pay public, and yet that's part of that is the way the world operates. So I can see both perspectives. My job is to bring back something that is functional. I think this is functional. And C, 1C, the team's fine with that. We already have drainage report all ready to do and building detention facilities. So that's already part of our scope of our work. So we're quite fine with C and D as well.
So item 2, costs. These are the costs like tap fees, connection fees,
Yes,
all those. So that's
in addition to.
which we knew in our budgeted already in the site project.
So you'll see those when we come back and the cost of the project, a tap fee that covers that sort of things. Karen, do you have a question? Okay.
And then my only other question, which I know Kristen's not here, so maybe, I don't know if Melissa could answer this, but so this pre-annexation agreement gets terminated and replaced with an annexation agreement. Do these site improvement fees in lieu get captured? So
They will be, yep.
yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So we're not told 20 years from now we never paid for that when they do Scott Street.
We would definitely want to keep a copy of our agreements.
They should be recorded. So.
They will be recorded. Any other questions? I know this is for some of us a hard thing to accept.
I just want to make a statement to my peers. I love this content, and I am very pleased with what I work that you has done, that the folks have done. I am going to give a look for this simply because we've been a very good partner to our city, not charging the full costs of access to our facilities for recreation activities for our students. So that's why I'm looking for examples of the consolidation of schools.
I would also like to second that any questions or my seeming dumbfounded at how something works is not a reflection on anyone's work at the district.
I think I'd also just let you know as you get to votes, if it didn't pass right now, then my next recommendation would work with Joe in the city. I think we would need to have a joint session, public session with the elected officials to go through this. I don't think the staff are going to be able to bring something better for elected officials. So if this wouldn't pass, then the next process would be to schedule a joint session with the city council and let the elected officials talk to one another and resolve some of these contractual philosophical conversations.
Being involved a little bit more and seeing this in my work life a lot as well, it's I will say the process was a little more agonizing than I would have ever thought it to be, and the back and forth was more extensive than I think was necessary. I'm glad we got to where we got. I don't think it's the appropriate amounts or process or things, just because we are being proactive and planning and trying to build out the site that we'll have to pay fees as another taxing district entity in the city versus neighbors that may get the benefit for free. So I'm frustrated by that. I will happily vocalize that. I think I have vocalized that to some people on council. But I do think that this is the appropriate step to keep moving forward on this property. So. I think we're ready for a vote.
All right, Dr. Breckenridge Pettit?
Yay.
Dr. Hill?
Aye.
Mr. Hobb?
Aye.
Mrs. Lundberg?
Aye.
Mrs. Pascal?
Aye.
Ms. Schuchman?
Aye.
And Mr. Smith?
Aye. I almost joined you, Jody. Okay, thank you all. Board Communications Committee reports. BOCES update. Anything, Mandy?
I I feel like we haven't had a meeting in a really long time.
I will update. Mandy doesn't
Yeah,
know this because I got an update on Thursday or Friday of last week, and I had no. I still need to get a lot more context. They are looking at kind of redesigning how our services work with BOCES, kind of an organizational redesign. We, as the BOCES, are the largest percentage, we have the most kids in the team. So when
Salida.
you bill per kid, which is most of the billing structures, which is a reasonable way to do that, that means any increase, we pick up a proportionally larger share of it. They are asking for an increase, so this is not part of our operational budget. I'm trying to get a hold. Hopefully, I'll be able to talk to Susan Udenberg tomorrow to better understand the request. But I still have a lot of things. But I do want you to know it could be a $30,000 to $40,000 ask of an increase, and I need to understand that better. But just kind of a heads up, because Mandy wouldn't have this information whatsoever, and I don't have enough information. But I do know that I don't want you to be surprised if Aaron on his list next month comes back and it's on there. You'll know that we've spent the last month discussing this with our partners and with our BOCES to try and understand how a better, bigger investment changes our programming for our kids, and what does that mean for us of what we might have to say. So I've got a lot of conversations between here and there. But I just bring it up so no one's shocked if it shows up like, well, where did this come from, David? That is being asked of us, and just got kicked off late last week, that ask. So I need to process that, investigate that, work with Mandy, and then it'll go to the board of the BOCES, which Mandy would be involved in. I think it'll be an interesting piece. Our district, to our special education department and teachers, do an amazing job in Salida, Colorado, taking care of all of those hard contracts, those IEPs. This change would possibly benefit many of our other districts, not necessarily us, and so this will be it'll be an interesting conversation to track, because I'm not sure if it'll actually change for the better our programming, so I'll need to figure out how to make that happen. Long thing to say, FYI, this could pop up on you. You'll see reports if that does, if it develops.
So will that be a discussion at the April 4th meeting?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, that's the next meeting is April 4th.
Okay. Facilities. Karen, you have anything?
No.
I don't have much. We talked about some tonight. I'm sure we'll be talking more at the next meeting at the end of March. Hopefully, we'll have more contracts, things like that, potentially in front of us to make decisions on. Similar to what we just discussed, having conversations with other local government bodies is always a little bit challenging. Just the way we have to work in public meetings and back and forth is challenging. So I just want to commend David for his work and pushing to get these things done, because that is something that the board has set out to do, and he wants to get them done by the end of the year to meet the objectives we set. So thanks for pushing. I know it pushes people past their limits and desires sometimes when we're pushing and they have other things to do. But so hopefully we'll have a similar conversation, I have a feeling, when we talk about other things with our other elected bodies. So nothing else for me there. So communications, Jen, Matt.
Got nothing. No updates.
Casby.
We're just over halfway through the legislative session. And last I read last week, and I haven't read anything this week, so maybe it has changed, but CASB was saying they're optimistic that the budget stabilization factor is not coming up this year, or not going to be a thing. I don't really know exactly what that will mean for our district, and nor would I get my hopes up at this stage of the game, but it seems tentatively exciting.
Okay, Dak, Ben, were you able to attend?
Negative.
Okay.
I would just say we have DAC, they're starting to look at some more programmatic strategic planning and having those conversations, because as we've kind of said, we get our finances and our facilities kind of in order, then that frees us up next year to talk to our community about programmatic aspirations and dreams and metrics and evaluation pieces. So your DAC's trying to think about how that might look, and they're having some conversations there. We did go over the operational wish list, excuse me, and I think there's something on the list that hasn't been recommended yet, just to make sure that many of them are interested in that work-based learning support. They think the high school is ready to move into that space, and so I know Mr. Hall's back there, and I think there might be, so that could be something that comes up. But some of those individuals on DAC felt strongly that that should be a higher priority, and they're working hard on some technology expectations and trying to understand what would be the metrics, what are our kids' needs. They're doing some survey work, which I think is in support of getting our infrastructure ready, because if you don't have a good enough infrastructure, then your end user programmatic hopes aren't really there. So I think getting the infrastructure done, which you guys just approved, will help us as we look at programming.
Is that work-based learning person like teacher, counselor, or is it fully dedicated to that?
The next ask would be a teacher who could give 1 of 4 periods a day to try and help kids work on their kind of progression through career interests, career explorations, till we get to the more of the apprenticeships and internships model. So that's what it would be, just really trying to grow that programmatic scaffolding, freshmen, sophomore, junior, seniors, what they do, so that it's not just once and done, but they're really working on it. But they would like to have somebody on our side of the payroll that's working on the inside to help with the CMC, so that communication goes back and forth. That's the concept. Is that a fair summary, Mr. Hall?
You say maxed out, is that because of Fred's capacity? So there may be a mix of high school person and CMC needs additional hires, even potentially.
I would say pretty strongly. I think it's as we're building a partnership, I think it's our turn to step into that zone. I think in the dance, it's our turn to make that move. And then once we've established some of that, then I think CMC maybe the next move is there. We'll have to see. But it's about a $17,000 ask right now. Jesse's looking at his scheduling to see if he just has it and can move the deck chairs around, as the metaphor goes, to be able to free somebody up. So he's investigating that. And I will say they had a work-based learning professional development with CMC, and it was a wonderful success. And I know that Mr. Hall's come back and said it really moved his staff and his willingness and interest in moving into those programmatic spaces deeper. So appreciate to our partner for that leadership and support, and it worked great.
Been a great partner. I see a microphone on.
No, it's just before you hit. I do have that information you asked for, Jody. I know we're getting close to the end of the meeting, so
Go ahead.
right, yeah. If you, I don't know when the right time is, but so you have 6 classified staff that are maxed out, and you have 29 certified staff. However, only 4 of those no one has a master's or greater and is maxed out, so everybody could still get more education at some point. There are 4 people who are maxed out right before a master's degree, where they would have to earn a master's degree in order to get to be able to get more compensation of any kind. The other 25 could all take some type of credits and do a horizontal and get more compensation. Yeah. 6 classified, 29 certified, and 4 certified that are really pretty unrealistic that they would go after their master's degree at that point, if that makes sense.
So that means 29 of them will get no step or level that we just approved.
That's correct. 35.
But
Yeah.
they won't get a level next year.
35 people will not get a step or level that you just approved in the district next year, unless they choose to do something else.
Expected. But could they this year, since we already approved this, or that would be that for them for next year?
What you just approved is next year's budget starting July 1. And what Aaron's saying, though, is the majority of them have control over that piece because they can move in educational credits. And every time you move over in educational credits, frequently where that cap is also moves down. Not always. It just depends where they are. It's such an individual storyline. So
Is the cap specific to our district?
no, every district's going to have to set their liabilities in some place. Doesn't have to. The most common practice is just put a cap and say, here's where that one is.
Okay, so that's something that could at some point the cap potentially be negotiated and changed
It could be.
if
Mhm.
CBT or the district would like that. to
Mhm.
happen.
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
I have an interest in that. I mean, I know CBT started that negotiation and kind of stopped, but we all talked about this. It kind of diminishes tenure with our staff, but I know it's negotiated and have to be
Okay.
brought up. But
Okay. I appreciate that.
Important context here.
David, just
In our
policy,
policy.
in our current policy, GCBAR, professional growth and salary placement, there is a statement towards the bottom of that, and I can send it. It says all teachers are expected to obtain the MA degree or 30 semester hours beyond the BA degree within 10 years of service to the district. Failure to maintain the MA degree or 30 semesters beyond the BA degree will result in denial of further salary increments. I'm not saying that's the right statement. I'm just saying that's a current statement that we have that says in 10 years, the expectation is that you have gone beyond your basic BA and you're working towards your master's.
In our red lines of what we recommended, we have deleted that because that is not something we have implemented or followed
Right.
or managed.
Yeah.
But that is the current wording in the current policy.
okay,
10,
And that's what we
can't move anymore. Because those teachers can move on the level side with professional development and credits.
Yep.
So there are 10 people.
okay. Policy audit. G is still main topic. I'm guessing we're not doing any more policy audit this year.
No.
Perfect. Ambitious goals. We'll work on it again next year.
We got pretty far.
Very good. Topics for future meetings. I know we've mapped out good stuff with various things. I'm not sure if there's anything else that we need to discuss at this moment. Beautiful. Remember 2 weeks we have that special meeting. More than likely we'll be going.
But this time I would schedule it and keep it on your calendars.
Yep. And the
The one thing that's not here, agenda review for April.
agenda review. Dr. Hill said he wanted to do that, but you want to pencil in and we'll schedule it appropriately.
What's the date?
We don't know. We usually
We'll
like
work
the
around
week
your
before.
schedule.
Kim's like, "Hey, what works?"
Dr. Blackburn's schedule, and then kind of work around that.
Just to confirm, that's the
It'd be around
Guiding
April 2nd.
factor. But I
First,
can
second,
look at
third.
it
6 o'clock.
sooner rather than later.
Is that what you guys have?
You're in.
Okay.
Deal.
Yeah, if it's the Tuesday, I think
It's the
okay.
Tuesday at 6,
Yeah.
26th of March.
Yes.
Just making sure, because
Yes.
I'm going to do that all the time.
Okay. For housekeeping items, we'll go back upstairs for
Correct. I
executive
feel
session.
like
It's better.
kick off your executive session.
Oh yeah, we'll do it.
down
We'll
here?
read it
Okay.
here and then
Alright.
we'll go upstairs.
Just for everyone's knowledge, we'll be turning off
Microphone.
YouTube. We'll be cleaning up in that sense.
So,
We'll be cleaning up this before
all right, here we go.
I don't have any-
I want to clarify on record that the Board of Education has issues to discuss in executive session as follows: to confer with the school district's attorney for the purpose of receiving legal advice pursuant to CRS 24-6-4024B on the following specific legal questions. 1, the board's legal rights and obligations with respect to engagement with employee groups in the negotiations about district policies in terms of condition of employment, and 2, the potential resolution of claims with an employee. Do I have a motion to go into executive session for the previously stated purpose? Thank you, Jen. Do I have a second? Thank you, Mandy. Any discussion?
The second half.
Yes. I got it. I
Can
got
we
it.
flip it so Jesse can go
First, we
home?
need to vote.
Can we flip it so he doesn't have,
No.
doesn't have to be here for 472 hours?
No, I already asked that.
Oh, we really can't?
No,
We really can't.
I really can't.
Okay.
He's tough.
Yeah.
It's the
Yeah.
job.
Yeah,
Kids.
he's calling
Spouse.
in.
Pedal was
We need
a
to vote
history if you
for
Yep.
executive session.
Ready for a vote?
All right, Dr. Breckenridge Pettit. Dr. Breckenridge Pettit, we have to vote
Aye.
first.
Aye.
Dr. Hill, Mr. Hobbs, Mrs. Lundberg, Mrs. Pascal,
Aye.
Ms. Schickman, and Mr. Smith.
Aye. Melissa Barber with Kaplan and Ernst, the board's attorney, Superintendent Blackburn, Will Waddell, Aaron Dobson, and then when we let him know, Jesse Hull will also be joining us in executive session. Okay, we'll go upstairs. Thank you all for the rest. Have a good night.